And before we begin the panel discussion, and I would like everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Well, let me begin by once again thanking everyone for being here this evening and participating in what will be the first of what we hope will be many discussions about the topics at hand. Not only the police issues that are facing the country, but some local issues, and hopefully more people will be getting involved in local government, and more people will be running for office for local government. Okay. Sounds like we got it under control. So again, welcome to Middletown City Hall. I want to thank Bishop Rollins for sitting down with me and organizing tonight's panel. As you know, this is a directive by Governor Cuomo, that we hold forums like this regarding policing in our individual departments and come up with a plan by April. So this will be the first of many. There's many ways to participate in this forum tonight, in this panel tonight. All panelists, the agenda will be, I'm going to introduce. Bishop Rollins is going to have a few minutes to say what he needs to say. Police Chief Arancho will be making a presentation, not a lengthy one from what I understand, about departmental operations. Then we're going to open up for panel discussion and back and forth. It's going to be basically, anyway, as we flow, we'll see how it goes. No set program. Then we will open it up online to anyone who has a question, who has registered or has called in. And I believe EJ in the back is also doing Facebook. If he has any Facebook questions, he will come up and read those questions. Before we begin any meeting in Middletown, we participate in many ways, as I said, for this, but there's two other ways you can participate in local government and national government. One is to vote. We encourage everyone to vote. And the other is to register for the census. And we need the census. Our numbers are below the state average for registration. And a lot of the issues we're going to talk about tonight are funding issues. And the only way you get funding for a municipality like Middletown or any municipality on the local, county, state level is if people register for the census. So if we end up with 30,000 people in the city of Middletown and we only have 25,000 people registered on the census, we're going to be providing services for 5,000 more people than we're getting funding for. If you don't care about city, care about your kids, because school funding, Medicare, Medicaid, all of those fundings are directly related to the census. So participate in every level, and we can have honest and open debate about the issues, but unless you're counted, we're not going to be able to accomplish some of the things that you folks, and not only here, but online and in our community, want unless we register for the census. So I'd just like to introduce the panel. As I mentioned, Bishop Rollins is to my right, and I once again thank him for his cooperation. To my left is Miguel Rodriguez. He's the City of Middletown Common Council President and also a member of the Middletown Police Commission. Next to him is our District Attorney, Dave Hoover. Next to Mr. Hoover is Carolyn Mucci Merchant. I've never called her Carolyn. So officially, she is now Carolyn, I guess. And Lizette is next to Lizette is Aguirre? Close enough. Say DiStefano. We're even. At the tables, I'm just going around the room, is Rabbi Rubenstein. Next to Rabbi Rubenstein is Major Moore from the Salvation Army. Next to Major Moore is Fred Williams, the newly elected member of the Middletown School Board. And next to Fred is Anthony Williams. I don't believe any relation, is it? No relation. And Anthony works for the Middletown School District and is a recent Middletown resident within the last couple of years, correct? 5 years. And then we come up as Theolonica Monk. Theolonica was one of the organizers of the early, I think the first march we had in Middletown. Next to Theolonica is is Nigel Watson, who is a wannabe chef sometimes. He worked for me years ago, but, and next to Nigel is Bishop Smith, and next to Bishop Smith is Bishop Williams, who is also here as the president of the Middletown School Board. So we have members of our Middletown Police Commission here. We have a few members from the public, a few members of the Middletown Police Department, and so you're not here to hear me talk. You might be here to answer some questions, but that's what I'll end with and turn it over to Bishop Rollins.
Thank you, Mayor, and to all of you, and certainly let me echo what you reminded us all of in terms of the importance of voting as well as the census. So those that know me know I always echo that voting is the currency of democracy. I am the senior pastor of the Tabernacle here in Middletown, former president of the Middletown NAACP. The other thing is the census. As the mayor reminded us, you know, if we don't participate in the census, then we have to live with that for another 10 years and trying to figure out how to get monies for the things that are needed for our community. I applaud the mayor and the governor for this executive order and what needs to happen, also our Orange County District Attorney, and even calls that I got from retired Lieutenant Dave Green, who reached out to me and they asked one simple question: what can I do? And you know what I'm saying is we can't have a viable community without having unity between our police officers who have taken an oath to protect and serve and the community which they serve. In fact, you can't even spell the word community without the word unity. George Floyd was not murdered. This is what started a whole lot of this. He was not murdered in a vacuum. He was murdered in a system that harbors racism, oppression, and injustices for black and brown people. There are more black men in the criminal justice system now incarcerated on probation or parole, awaiting trial, than there were slaves in 1850. More black men are barred from voting than when the 15th Amendment was ratified. Give you an example of why this is so important. Michael Vick served more time in prison for dog fighting than all of the police officers combined who killed an unarmed black man. So when I say I applaud them and the city of Middletown for doing what we're doing, I do that wholeheartedly. Can we change the culture of policing without changing the culture of police officers? How do we reform policing around the mindset of a Derek Chauvin or a liberal progressive Amy Cooper who appears to be innocuous? We need our willing white brothers and sisters to be allies rather than silent adversaries, and to be agents of change rather than agents of chaos. It's silence and gradualism that have fueled the foundation of the continuation of racism in our country. When reasonable people go silent, unreasonable people take over. We cannot accept more of the same, for more of the same simply results in more of the same. You don't have to be violent to be vocal. In fact, silence is more violent than being vocal in the face of injustice and oppression. And we have to make sure that this doesn't become us versus them, a hatred thing, because we have to make sure we have to be careful lest we become what we despise. We got to commit to this thing. There's a lot on the table, and we are here to listen. We come from all different walks of our community, and I'm grateful and honored to be a part of it.
Thank you, Bishop. Chief?
Good evening. I'd like to first start off by thanking all the members of the panel this evening, and I'd like to apologize for anybody that I might back to. Just the logistics of the room doesn't account to allow everybody in front, so I do apologize. I look forward to this forum. I hope this is just the first of many. It's an opportunity for me to share with the community what the Middletown Police Department does, what we're about, where we've come from, things that we've accomplished, but it's also an opportunity for me to take away ideas from the community, direction from the community, things that our community would like to see changed. So I look forward to the open discussion. Tonight we did prepare a PowerPoint presentation. I don't want to sit and lecture through a PowerPoint presentation, but I will go through some slides to get the conversation started. And then I welcome and look forward to the feedback, questions, I do have some of my staff here with me this evening, Lieutenant Jeff Dolan and Lieutenant Frank Graziano. They're both administrative lieutenants. Jeff oversees the operations of the department, which is the patrol division, and Frank oversees the services of the department, which are the detectives, narcotics, juvenile aid, the support services. So they'll be here to help answer any questions and to take in the feedback from the community as well. So just a little bit about Middletown Police. And actually, just before I get started, also, everybody in this room was selected for a reason to join us here this evening, either from the city's end or from Pastor Rollins' end, or Bishop Rollins, I'm sorry. You guys all have an intricate role in our community. You are all deeply rooted into the community, and you have a lot of value into our community. So thank you again for being here and being part of this. Just to start off with the mission statement of the Middletown Police Department, I just want to read through this just to kind of set the tone for what the Middletown Police Department is about. This is the mission statement. We've been serving the City of Middletown since 1888, and the principal mission statement of the City of Middletown Police Department is to serve the community by protecting life and property, by preventing crime, by enforcing laws, and by maintaining order for all citizens. It is essential for the members to remember that in the execution of our duties, we act not for ourselves, but for the good of the public. We respect and protect the rights of all citizens, and perform our duties with honesty, zeal, courage, discretion, fidelity, and sound judgment. Central to our mission are the values that guide our work and decisions and help us to attribute to the quality of life in Middletown. Our values are characteristics or qualities of worth, and they are non-negotiable. Although we may need to balance them, we will never ignore them for the sake of expediency or personal preference. We hold our values constantly before us to teach and remind us that the community of our ideals. They are the foundation upon which our policies, goals, and operations are built. In fulfilling our mission, we need the support of our citizens, elected representatives, government officials, and the criminal justice system in order to provide the quality of service our values commit us to providing. And then that moves us into, these are the core values of the Middletown Police Department. Human life, public trust, integrity, and professionalism. The next slide you'll see is just a quick overview of the police department. We do have a 70-person sworn police department at this time, and I'll get into some of the demographics of that in a few moments. The chart that you see on the PowerPoint is just a breakdown of the organizational flow chart of the department, just so you can see that there is supervisory levels in every aspect of the department. So it was mentioned a few moments ago by the mayor. How did we get here tonight? We've seen a lot of unrest over the last several weeks in and around the nation. But what brings us here tonight is the governor's executive order number 203. It is basically required for the community and the police department to come together, to have community forums, to work together on a solution to move forward. So in Governor Cuomo's executive order 203, he outlines many responsibilities that need to be enacted. And he also identifies many things that he expects from this order. Jeff. So in this slide, there are many, many items, and the ones that are highlighted in yellow, I did that on purpose because they're the things that the Middletown Police Department has in place as of this time. So you could see, as you peruse through this, many of the things, procedural justice, we've had that in place for 2 years, and we'll get into that a little bit further. Use of force policies. I've been with the department for over 20 years, and we've had a use of force policy from the onset of my career. Implicit bias awareness training. De-escalation training and practices. Diversion programs, restorative justice practices, community-based outreach, conflict resolution, problem-oriented policing, hotspot policing, focused deterrence, crime prevention through environmental design, violence prevention, and reduction of interventions, model policies and guidance promulgated by the New York State Municipal Training Council, and standards promulgated by the New York State Law Enforcement Accreditation Program. We are also an accredited police department, and I will get into that a little bit further as we speak this evening as well. Just a quick overview of our city. And many of you already do know this, but for the people that are at home or that are not aware of it, the population of the city of Middletown is just over 28,000 residents as of this time, and we've heard the comments about the importance of the census. These are coming from the 2010 census numbers. So the breakdown of that would be 39.7% Hispanic, 36.6% white, exclusive of Hispanic, 21% black, 1.9% Asian, and 0.8% Native Americans. So over the last several weeks, I've had heard some conversation in regards to, and not just over the last couple of weeks, throughout my career, the importance of having the police department represent the demographics of our community. We are not at that point at this time, and it's not for lack of trying. So I'll just go into the demographics of the police department just for some insight. I currently have 70 sworn members, which consist of 68 full-time police officers and 2 part-time police officers. Of those 70, 62 are white, 1 is black, and 7 are Hispanic. 62 of them are male, 8 are female. In addition to the sworn personnel, I have a staff of 14 civilian support staff. Of that 14 civilian support staff, 11 are white, 1 is black, 2 are Hispanic, 5 are male, and 9 are female. As I said, it's not for lack of trying. It's not that we don't have the desire to have our police department reflect our community. We operate under civil service guidelines, a civil service exam, in which there are protocols as to what the requirements are to become a police officer here for the city of Middletown. And it's not the same in every municipality. It is it's similar throughout New York State. But we do a civil service exam. It would be the first step in becoming a police officer. The exams are given every 4 years. The last exam was given in 2018. Once someone successfully completes the exam, and there are some requirements, in which I will get into as well, the second part of that would be a physical agility test, followed by a background investigation, so a medical exam, a psychological exam, interview with our police commission, which I will also talk about here shortly. But to even get into the exam, there are some minimum qualifications. High school or GED diploma, in addition to 60 college credits or a combination of 30 college credits and 2 years of active military service or prior police service. You must be 21 years old to become a police officer here in the Middletown Police Department, and you cannot have reached your 35th birthday. You can be 19 years old to take our exam, and if you have any type of military experience, it can extend the age requirements on a hiring process. So there's several layers of the hiring process. We've done a lot of outreach, especially this last time in 2018 for our exam, and we had upwards of 500 people take the exam. And we would like to credit that to the amount of outreach that we did in and around our community. We participated in job fairs at the local high school, the local colleges. We went into the malls. We extended to some of the other colleges within the Mid-Hudson region. We utilized social media. We actually offered a police tutorial study program, and we made it that it would be free for any city resident. In addition, we set up a question and answer session right here in this room. So for any prospective police officers that wanted to discuss the job, the requirements, the process, we had that question and answer here in this room. We had a fairly good turnout. We can't force people to take the exams. We can't force people to meet the minimum requirements. We have tried with the recruiting. There's been some adjustments over the years to accept military in place of the education requirements. But I think it's very important, and I know in speaking with some of you in the past, there's been some discussion about the importance of education, especially in the black and brown community, to move into these positions, to have a position in the police departments. It is super important. So we'd like to discuss that further, I'm open to the discussion on that, or we could come around to it at a different point throughout the evening.
I do have a question. So in regards to this, how does the police department or law enforcement plan on, I guess, bettering a relationship? So what do I mean? As a black and brown individual, by the age of 7, 8, our community, our children have already been traumatized by something that happened with the police. And then as they get older, it doesn't really get better. So how do we break that mold? Because how can I want to be something that I have no respect for, or I'm scared of, or I see that's killing me? So you guys have these openings for these police officers, and have you ever taken into consideration that maybe the black and brown community are not running because we have been damaged and broken so much by, like, why would I want to be a cop? I mean, so I think that's the first thing that we have to figure out, because we obviously, Middletown needs, or not even Middletown, but the law enforcement does need more black and brown. But we have to address that particular situation. So, like, I would like to open that up. Like, what can we do? Because that is an issue. I can't be something that I'm scared of. I don't want to run to something that has harmed my family. I'm running away from that. So how do we fix that relationship, or how does the police plan to fix that? Because you have to have minorities on your force, or it's never going to work.
Well, aren't you talking about two separate issues?
I mean, he said that we're talking about the demographics of policing.
Well, I can tell you what we did in Middletown in order to address the both issues. One, the procedural justice platform is outreach, community outreach. That's one of the portions of it. And I don't think any department in Orange County has done more community outreach than the Middletown Police Department, from pop-up barbecues to neighborhood meets to meeting individually to the chief and his staff identifying youth in trouble, bringing their parents in, and meeting individually with the parents and saying, your child is having a problem, he's hanging out with some bad kids, we don't want him to go down that road, here's what you need to do, we're here to help. So those are some of the things. But on the bigger picture of testing, there is the prior chief, Ray Bethencourt, is a black male. When I appointed Ray in 2010 to become police chief, he was the only African-American on the Middletown Police Department, and he was the chief. Ray did quite a bit of outreach into the community, trying to convince people to get involved, and it still wasn't working. So Ray said to me that, you know what, one of the things is that maybe the test isn't fair. The test isn't given by the city, the test is devised by New York State, because we all come from different backgrounds. So what we did was that we requested that Ray be on the New York State Commission that reviews test questions to see whether the tests were skewed in a way towards people with certain backgrounds, but not so much from people who you're talking about in your case. So there is systems that need to be broken down even more. Obviously, it's the state commission is not doing enough to adjust those tests to make them more reflective. But I think from the local level, the testing requirements, there's nothing we can do. That's a state level question, and I think that's something that they should work on and continue to work on. But from an outreach, I can assure you that I have not seen a department, and I've been here since 1984, as a councilman, too long, I guess, Mooch. You were going to run against me, you told me, right? But since 1984 in one capacity or another, and I've been with some good chiefs, and I've been with one horrible chief who put tanks on the streets of Middletown, who thought it was a good idea to militarize the police. And guess what happened during that period? Crime spiked. So murder spiked. We went back 20 years on that. So there is a point to how policing is done. But I think the point here and I'm also chairman of the police commission, is that we're doing things here, and we know we got a lot more to do, and we're going to do it. So we're going to look to you for suggestions, and the people here for suggestions, and the people in the community on how to bridge that gap, because I think we're doing a lot now. You have members of the council, you have the police department playing soccer. These are all things, when you talk about defund, that's not defunding, that's costing more money. So we're putting those police resources, those dollars, into cooking hot dogs at Summit Field, meeting with the parents, talking with the parents, playing soccer with the kids. I don't play it, but the chief did. And those types of activities. And I believe that is what went a long way during this latest crisis, that people in the community are looking in a more positive manner. We grant you there's problems, but I would look to you folks for what you think we can do, and then we can then break that down on how we can encourage people to run and how we can develop that relationship.
Suggestion?
Yes.
I have a suggestion to help with that. One step I would do is go to all these schools in our area, and you guys can go in front of the auditorium, in front of the kids, and talk to the kids. Let them see that you're not scary, that you're human, that you care about them. I think that would really help a lot, because you can't reach everybody with the pop-up barbecues because everybody don't come out. But all them kids is in school. So I think it would be nice if, every couple of months you guys go to the school, bring the police cars, let the sirens, let them know we're all right.
If I could just jump in on this conversation here, a couple things. As the mayor said, Chief Bethencourt was instrumental in being part of the testing process on the state. There's also discussion under Chief Bethencourt about changing the standards for the minimum qualifications for a police officer. Over the years, the police profession has excelled into a profession. It's not so much a job. There's a tremendous amount of training and education that go into it. And it's not just a one-time on the front end. It's continued education. So we as a community, need to find a way, not just to bridge the gap between the police and the community relations, but we need to put in place and encourage people to become educated. We have to work that avenue and that angle as well. It can't just be that the police have to change the standards to allow additional people into the ranks of the police department. We have to work on the community level for the education process. As far as the outreach, actually also on the testing level, there's, it started under Chief Bethencourt also when he was on the panel, was New York State, as the mayor said, is the governor of, they govern this exam, the Civil Service Department. So civil service exams, if anyone's ever taken them, they're not always directly pointed at what the profession is. So over the last several years, there's been a research project that was put out through many police departments throughout New York State, and we were lucky enough to participate in it, where the members of my police department had the opportunity to answer questionnaires to supply feedback to the Civil Service Department on what are important elements of the testing and what is specific to the job that is important for people to know and what should be included in the exams. As far as the outreach, I'd like to just expand on it in a few moments. And I agree with you, and I've had a conversation, a brief conversation, asking to have more with Pastor Williams, or Bishop Williams. He's also school board president, and that is one of the things that I would like to see also. But I think we have some of those in place, and I think it's just that a lot of people don't know everything that we do, and that's how I started off tonight. I want to make sure people know what we're doing, because we are doing a lot, but again, we all agree that there needs to be more, and we need to get that feedback. But it's not just the pop-up barbecues. We are in the community, walking posts. The officers are out in the community, they walk. They're encouraged to engage people. It's not just a walk to put miles on someone's shoes and to wear the soles off of their boots. It is to engage people, to build guardians in the community, to have a conversation. I encourage them all the time. Get out of the car, have a cup of coffee with somebody. Talk to somebody while they're waiting in line at the bus station, while they're waiting to go to work in the city, while they leave their home or their loved ones behind to go earn money. We're here to protect that investment of theirs. So there's a million opportunities, and I tell them that all the time. I encourage them, I challenge them to find a way. Go fishing with a kid, throw the baseball or basketball or football or soccer ball. But we see these things, we are doing them. Are we doing them 100% of the time? No, we're not. We always have room for improvement there as well. But the patrol officer is running call to call to call. So in between, we're encouraging them to take a few moments out of their busy schedules to do as much outreach, get outside of the barriers of their vehicle. But the jump out barbecues, they were a great success. They have grown. over the years, I've heard from media sources, I've heard from community members, why don't you advertise these? These are great, you should be recognized for them. To me, it was never about the recognition. It was about doing the right thing for the community. So we went out into either parks or housing complexes, unannounced. We brought food, entertainment, and it just grew. It grew to the point that we've had the Parks and Rec, the fire department, the school district jumped in with us to come out and be part of it. We had the schools officials, teachers, principals, the superintendents join us in these activities because, again, this is a community as a whole. Cops and Kids Field Day, Kids Celebration, Youth Police Academy. We were in 3 youth police academies every summer. So you're saying about engaging the kids and learning and getting them to trust us and build those relationships. We are putting in the effort. We're investing into the community. And most of these events are sign-up events, and they sign up and sell out like that. And when I say sell out, there's no cost for most of this. It's just a matter of we have to limit the participants. So when the Parks and Rec, who helps us organize these and gives us the space, when they put this out on the website or flyers, they're filled in moments. Night Out Against Crime. Last year, we brought it back down to the heart and soul of the city of Middletown, the downtown, to allow people to walk to the event. It rained, but we still had a great, successful turnout. So birthday parades. We were stricken by COVID, where everything was shut down. Kids weren't allowed to go to school. They couldn't have birthday parties with their friends. Lieutenant Dolan came up with the idea. It was a hit. We did 250, almost 300. And to see the look on a young person's face when the police and fire department showed up to sing happy birthday to them, it's priceless.
Yes.
So we continue to try to do as much as we can. And we're always seeking new ideas. When we talk with our supervisors, when we talk with our officers, we ask them, bring us ideas. We don't have all the ideas. We love to be creative and find new ways. Cops and Cookies. We do a Cops and Cookies event every year before Christmas, where we bring in cookies, Parks and Recs again. We get volunteers from my police department, and we sit and we decorate cookies with the children, the youth of the community. Then they watch a movie as they eat their cookies and have milk. Again, that one sells out in 10, 15 minutes. The Trunk or Treat. Some other community outreach that has been done over the last several years is I've hosted town hall meetings right here in this room. We've publicized them. I've encouraged the members of the community to come out, engage us, learn what we're doing, give us feedback. We've attended many community meetings at different housing complexes and authorities to meet and greet and address concerns or just to create relationships. So we are working on those, building those bonds so that we do have the members of this community that want to be police officers. And we know we can't start at the top and get, the adults that have already, come through life for the most part and found their way or their profession, but we're trying to start with the children because we know they're our future. And I tell people when we do these events, one of our biggest challenges is those teenagers. You see them sometimes come into the events, they look at us, they give us the face, they go away. I take it upon myself to go and get them, try to engage them. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Even at the most recent demonstrations, you guys saw me out there. I would try to engage somebody. Some people would walk away from me, wanting nothing to do with me, but some people are willing to engage me. But I'm willing to do it, as are my staff. I could tell you, when we first started a lot of this outreach, to really press it out, at first, this is what I got from my people. Like, this isn't right. But over time, of us doing it, for them seeing me out there, seeing the lieutenants out there, engaging people, they saw the progress. I've had many people over the last year, many of my officers come back and say, hey, I didn't believe in this at first, but I see the results. So it's not just me preaching it, it's not me having something on paper. This is stuff that we do year in and year out. Unfortunately, this year we were plagued with the COVID pandemic, so we're restricted. We had a tremendous amount of activities planned for this year.
But Chief, one other point which really hasn't been opened up yet was we just made a major investment into a new recreation center off of County Route 78. It's a campus. On that campus, one of the buildings that we have renovated, first of all, we got the property for $1 through the governor, and we ended up getting a $400,000 grant through Senator Metzger for the renovations. Right across from the rec center is the Orange County Police Academy. And that's where the Orange County Police Academy will be relocating. It might not, the Chiefs Association, Chief, you give me the right title.
I can go through.
Orange County Chiefs Association. But what they're going to do is there's going to be an ongoing, in exchange for $1 a year rent, they must interact with the youth in our community in that center. And maybe you can just expand on that. You're a little bit more long-winded than I am, so if you could do it briefly.
So as the mayor said, the home of the Orange County Police Academy is coming here to Middletown. It's a great opportunity. As we've been progressing through the process, there's some critics to the fact that the police academy is going to be right next to the rec center where there's a child daycare, there's going to be kids coming and going. It's like, are you crazy? Like, to me, that's a great opportunity. That's teaching the police officers from day one to learn how to interact with youth and community members. So again, just another layer of ability for us to build relationships. Are we going to build relationships with everyone? You and I both know that's not going to work. There's some people that are not going to like police for a million reasons. I'll give you a quick example. I don't mean to be long-winded. There's a young man that I've been working with over the last couple of years. I was contacted by a high school teacher, 2017, asking if I would help mentor this young man. He had a little bit of hard time with his family and whatnot, not to get into all the details, but in my conversations, when I first started working with him, he's an African-American male. He was 17 at the time when I started working with him. Mom's incarcerated, dad is deceased. He's trying to struggle through school. He was left to stay in a house by himself. The house burned down on him. He's now living in a hotel. He's going back and forth to school, trying. He's got no real guidance in his life. When I first met him, he'd shake when I saw him. We would talk. He had such negative feelings about police because of what he's experienced. But as we got talking, he never had really a personal interaction with the police that was negative. It was stuff that he heard, saw, was told. And now all of the staff from my department, they all interact with him. He's successfully working. He's doing everything he's supposed to be doing. So I think sometimes that negative interaction isn't always that personal encounter. It's something that someone else told them, or it's a perception, or who I'm around. I can't be friends with the police. So we have still a lot of work to do to overcome some of that. Another outreach that we do, school resource officer. You talk about being in school. We're in the 4 schools here in Middletown. I have a police officer in the schools. They're not there. They're not the security guard. They're there as one, if there's a hostile event, they're there for immediate action, but they are not the primary security within the school. They're there to interact with the students. They're a conduit from the police department, the community, into the school. They know if maybe there's a domestic dispute at that person's house the night before, and the next day that child is acting out a little bit. They're going to be able to link that together and help get the resources that person needs. They're there as mentorships. Some of the officers participate in the My Brother's Keeper program, which is another mentorship program. So it just goes on. And then partnerships. We've partnered with so many people in the community to do this outreach. The Middletown School District, an amazing partner with us. Middletown Parks and Recs, code enforcement. We have learned that code enforcement is our friend because a lot of things aren't police, aren't criminal, things that are brought to our attention. So we utilize the proper resources that we have available to us. DPW, Middletown Fire Department Senior Center, Hope Not Handcuffs, and I could get into this a little bit. This is more of like almost like a diversion program rather than going to jail. Fearless with Safe Homes, the Warming Center, Honor, Soup Kitchen, Salvation Army, Alcohol and Drug Abuse Council, Orange County Stop DWI, the Sheriff's Department, the Orange County District Attorney's Office, State Police, Parole, Mental Health, Department of Probation, Temple Sinai, the Interfaith Council, YMCA, Access. These are people that we've worked with and support and work together as a community. So when we talk about the different avenues, it's not just the jump out barbecues. We're trying to hit it from multiple spots.
I have a comment. So what programs can we get that already started, or can we start that actually provide people for understanding what police actually do? Because you go to the children, you see the kids say, oh, the cop is personable, I can talk to him, he's nice. But then you have the parents at home who are like, be careful with the police, you gotta act this way, So what programs are actually in place that we can actually be transparent? So like, when you stop someone, why do you ask for the ID? Why do police do what they do? So it's more transparent, so it can be understanding to kids. Like, this is why they do what they do. This is why they operate the way they operate. Not all police officers are going to have. You're not going to have an experience like a George Floyd with every officer. It's not going to happen. This is why they do what they do. It won't deter kids from being cops because like, oh, this is why they do what they do. A lot of times you have people like even me, for example, you're afraid like, okay, get pulled over, like, okay, shoot. Why do you do what you do? Why is that operating? So now you're giving those people, those kids, and even the parents that knowledge. Okay, this is why they do what they do. This is why they operate. How they operate. It gives people an understanding. So now they have an understanding of how you operate and why you move the way you move. So now they can be like, okay, this is why they do what they do. So now I know why they move that way. So now it doesn't really deter kids from like, I don't want to be a cop because I get pulled, I'm scared. Why do I operate the way I operate? Is there any programs like that are actually transparent with kids and adults? Because even the parents, you have to look at the parents, because you can reach the kids all you want. But if the parents are afraid of the cops, the kids are going to be afraid of the cops because it's learned behavior.
I agree with you, and that's a great point. We do deal with that some kids are reluctant to have a relationship with the police because of the parents' influence on that. And we could see that. I've experienced myself where a young child will look or try to wave and the parent will pull them away. I can't change a parent's perception, but as far as the education, that is actually one of the things that I would like to see kind of brought into the school level. And over the last couple of weeks, especially with the demonstrations, there's a lot of youth that demonstrated. And when I say youth, late teens, early 20s, that I fielded a lot of questions about exactly what you're saying. Why does this happen? What goes on in city government? How do you operate? Funding? All these different questions that I guess I've always taken for granted. But when I reflect back as a young adult, I didn't care about those things. They weren't like important to me at the time. But I think if we could get into the school district at some form, into like the high school level, maybe as juniors or seniors, and start having those conversations and explaining and answer questions and just kind of giving a guideline of what police do, our function and our role in the community, and even not just police, but local government as a whole. There's a lot of questions that have been posed to me of how a local government operates. I just feel like we're missing this on the education level somewhere. And I'm not saying it's not being done. Listen, I was a high school student. I was a teenager. I did not want to pay attention to a lot of things in school. I didn't want to listen to the government class and the history classes and stuff like that. But now it's probably more important than ever to have some type of back and forth conversation.
I think reaching the kids who are younger than waiting until they're older.
We do have a program in Middletown that brings kids into City Hall, through the school district. Unfortunately, it's not the Middletown School District, it's the Pine Bush School District, who brings kids over to Middletown City Hall once a week. Mary Zahorchik runs the program. It's people who aspire to, if they have aspirations to be a policeman, we direct them most of the time to the police and the courts. If it's a fireman, we send them down there to see how the operations work. If it's any other interests, if it's a finance interest, we try to direct them to the finance office, or legal interest. We have internships that we do a lot of internships through here, not this year, but through Orange County. They do provide students. Some of them are paid, some of them unpaid. Some of our interns, both, they come and they are now attorneys that have interned with our legal department. So there are programs, but I guess we're not doing a good enough job getting the word out to folks like you and others in the community that these are great programs. And we would love to host that program in the Middletown School District. And I believe with the change, there's no secret that Mr. Eastwood and I did not get along. This program was offered to Dr. Eastwood, and he outright rejected it. Pine Bush, and it was only offered to them after Pine Bush came to us. I didn't create the program. This was created by a school teacher at Pine Bush who happens to live in the city of Middletown. So once a week, every semester, we have an afternoon of students from Pine Bush here in the city of Middletown. And I know the same program was offered, a similar program, through Toro College, with some type of mentorship with high school seniors and juniors. So as I said, with the new superintendent and Bishop Williams on the school board, I think it's something that I've sort of taken for granted that the district would not be interested in, but I'd be willing to pursue it once again with the district. And it's a hands-on thing, and I see what you're saying. Does anybody else have a comment on that?
There's more to that. There's a whole lot more. What I'm hearing is I'm hearing this litany, this laundry list of things, but what we need to be more focused on, in my opinion, are outcomes, results. Because we can have a long list of things that are being done. I can walk back, and what I'm hearing from what Moochie's talking about, I haven't heard anything addressing the school-to-prison pipeline, which will feed exactly why they're afraid. That kid at home, if he's at home by himself, if she's at home by herself, By the time you get to it, it's a whole different ball game. You know, I look at things, for example, like when we talk about officers being in the community, we used to have residency requirements. I'm not suggesting that that's what's needed, but I'm certainly not pulling it off the table. As things are being said, I'm making a list of action items, and I'm encouraging everybody to do the same thing. We're not just here to listen, we're here to do something once we hear what needs to be done. Because when you talk about the SROs, those kids probably don't even want to, I haven't heard positive things from the kids that are attending the high school in regards to their relationship with the SROs. So when you've got a laundry list, I'm talking about outcomes. If you want those kids to be there, you can have, I have a niece that had 60 college credits by the time she graduated high school. So when she goes to college this fall, she'll be a rising junior. Under your scenario, if she's 19, she's already in position to take the civil service exam and to actually become a minority police officer. So we've got to look at some of the things that need to be happening. You know, you talk about police athletic leagues. I've had this conversation with Mr. Massey on several occasions, and I know he's tried desperately to change that number, to have 70 officers and to have one black officer. Do the math. If you went over the demographics, we've got 21% of black people in this city.
But Jim, what's the solution, Jim?
That's what I'm thinking. That's what, yeah.
Well, let me just touch on the residency requirement. Back in the early 2000s, we had a residency requirement and bargained for with all three unions, police, fire, and civil service. When I left office in 2005, the mayor and the common council bargained that away.
Right.
And gave it away for nothing. So we fought for 20 years to get a residency requirement because you're right. Through a residency requirement, your workforce, not only your police, but your fire and your city employees will be more reflective of the community.
Absolutely.
But it was bargained away,
Yes.
and it was given away for nothing.
Yeah.
And so now we have it with the fire department now, and believe it or not, since we've had the residency required back with the fire department, we have hired one African-American fireman, and we also have, I believe, one or two Latino firemen that basically, in the history of the city fire department, we've had one. Mm-hmm. So there are actionable items that we can take and things that we can do. But when it comes to solutions, the community's got to be there when a city council votes to overturn a residency requirement. Now, whether it was advertised or not, I don't know. I assume it was.
No, it was not.
And nobody shows up and objects. We need your voice. We need your voice, and your voice. We need all your voices to say, hey, that's not right. And we can't, and under New York State law, we cannot unilaterally invoke a residency requirement. And this wasn't a residency retroactive requirement. It was a residency requirement on new hires. So it did not impact negatively current employees. You weren't changing their lives. Mm-hmm. But it was in place. We can't impose it. We have to bargain for it. And we did once again bargain for it with the fire department union. The police union contract is coming up this year. We're going to once again ask for it. And the civil service union contract, we will once again ask for it.
And those dollars stay in the community.
Those dollars stay here, but it's not only the dollars, it's the police officer then raising his family, then usually some of your kids will stay in the community that they were raised in. Mm-hmm. And they will participate more in those communities. And not to say that the Middletown Police Department, we have probably single digits residents, but that's how they were hired.
Right.
That's not the fault of an individual officer. They made a decision on a career decision. It's the city government's job to offer the exam with a residency requirement in the contract so that people know they have a year or two to move in. So it's been done, it was given away, but now we're back into looking at it, and hopefully down the road, that's not something that changes over a few years.
Right.
That's something that takes 10, 20 years to see the impact of it. And the irony is, if they would have never changed it, you would see right now the full impact, basically, of the residency requirement in the city of Middletown. So I know we have a lot of issues to address, so anybody else on this issue?
Just real quick, I just wanted to say this just really, really quick. Listening to everybody, I think I have two suggestions, and I think these two suggestions covers everything. The first thing is, I just want Middletown to know, like, you guys definitely are doing a great job. Like, don't get that twisted. You guys definitely set the tone. You know, there's work to be done, but you guys have definitely set the tone in other, especially in Orange County, in other areas. But I think the first thing that we should do, if you're talking about results and actions right now, on the community side, I think we need to implement something like yesterday, where we can start getting some of these young men that have felonies and records and get them cleaned up and see, because a lot of them that have records are stupid. They're stupid things that were just, nonsense that could be overlooked, but maybe cannot be overlooked now because it's on their record, and that's probably holding them back. So I think that we need to figure out like a little program, something where you police get in there, we figure out how to clean it up, some community service, whatever they have to do to get it cleaned up, and let's get them through. Maybe that's another area we can work on. And then the second area I think that we can work on to build this bridge between the community and police, because you guys are doing a lot of work, and we're just talking about Middletown alone. You guys are doing a lot of work. So I want you guys, everybody, to notice something. When we were out here fighting for George Floyd was fighting for justice, a lot of things calmed down when his people were arrested and they were held accountable. We're out here now fighting for people like Breonna Taylor because her people are not held accountable. So I think a suggestion should be, and I feel like Middletown is the perfect place to set the tone for other people to follow suit, is when you give your officers consequences or you reprimand them, that needs to be public. That needs to be public. Just like when the criminals do something out in the street, that needs to be public. It's public. You can go in the paper, you go Google it, what we've done, and it's public information. So, what makes the police so much different? I think that if the officers are accused of something and you do take action, that needs to be public. And guess what? That just shows a simple thing, accountability, because that's all we're out here fighting for, is justice and equality. This whole laundry list of this bucket list that we have with schools and all this stuff, all that will fall in line once we see that everybody is being held accountable. So I think that's the bridge gap that we're missing. You're working hard, you guys are doing it. We're out here standing up for what's right, we're doing it. So what are we missing? Accountability. If I do a crime right now and I'm doing something wrong, the police hold me accountable, the jury hold me accountable, the judge, the DA, everybody holds me accountable. So whether you have a uniform or not, if you do something, if I come to you and say, Chief, that you're off, and you look into it, that needs to be public. What did you do as a boss? Did you give them a written? I need to know what you did, just like the world knows what I did. So I think that's the bridge gap right there. Before we could do all this other pointing, everybody needs to be held accountable. Everybody needs to be public, and now we know what we're dealing with, and then we can move forward. And then in the process of that, the ones that's out here, these young people that are out here, that are smart and talented and phenomenal, that made a mistake, I feel like we should go grab them and let's see what we can do, because those are the ones that want to be police and forensics. Those are the ones that actually went through the system. So now when they went through the system, they have something that a lot of people don't have: experience.
That's already been changed. There's a law that was repealed from 1976. That's why we've got to have a multi-pronged approach. And it was just passed in the Senate. I had that conversation with Senator Metzger, and I asked her to send a list of legislation that had already been passed, and it has been passed, I believe, as of June 9th.
Which one?
The law, civil rights regarding...
The repeal of Civil Service Law 50A.
Okay.
Yes, so that if there is disciplinary action, their records can be foiled, Freedom of Information Law. So that has already been addressed, so to your point. So
when you say can be, that means it can be, or is it going to be?
No, it's done. The law's passed.
But you got to go request the
Yeah, the law's
information.
passed. It was just passed.
Okay, but you said we have to request the information?
Well, you can foil it if it's not, if it's not readily given, you can foil it, and there's no opposition to it.
So just so it explains, a lot of people on layman terms, so going forward, if something happens with the police, they will be held accountable where everybody will have access to what's going on, the information?
Well, if you get into the specifics of the law that was repealed, and maybe our district attorney might be more familiar with it, it was just passed. I want to say on June 9th.
Okay.
So it's public, or you have to request?
You have to request it at this point.
You would have to
At this point, it's
request.
not public, it's still, you have to request it, so if you don't request it.
Just like
you
any
still
other
can't see
court
it.
record or anything like that.
Yeah, any
you
other
have to
public
request
record,
it.
it's Freedom of Information Law.
Information law.
It has to be foiled at this point, but in the
Your mic's not on, sir.
Yeah, the light's off.
Oh, the light is off, you're on? Okay. Backwards around here. Yes, under the old law, essentially, the only way discipline really came out was in a court proceeding, a defense attorney would make a request to a judge. And then if the judge found that it was relevant, it could be released. Just for practicality, in Orange County, over the last 10 years, that only happened about 10 times that a defense attorney actually asked for something like that, and a judge found that something was actually relevant to a criminal case. But under the repeal of 50A now, if a FOIL is made to the agency, then the agency will have to respond to that and release it. New York City has taken a step, Mayor de Blasio, I don't know all the details, he says that all the information is going to be made public. So that's where that is at this point. But the law has passed, it is law. And again, a FOIL can be made regarding an officer's disciplinary record, and then the agency has to respond to that. The real question you should ask yourself when you're dealing with 50A is, maybe the chief can answer, I don't want to put him on the spot, but how many officers in your department have any significant discipline?
Good, you'll talk about it.
Very few, if any. Most of them that had any type of significant discipline have been removed from service. We have had police officers in my career that have gone to prison. It's been publicized. It's been in the media. We've removed people for off-duty conduct. So we have a very detailed rules and regulation policy. We also have a civilian commission, a civilian oversight of our police department, which is another aspect that many people are looking for, an oversight of the police department. We have those in place already.
And I think the chief makes a very good point there, that I think when you move around Orange County and you look at the various towns and villages, you have 31 municipal police agencies, what you will find is the vast majority of them, either the town or village board or their police commissioner or police commission oversees their discipline. There's very little that is out there regarding the total number of officers in Orange County. And if you had another chief, if you had all your chiefs up here and you asked that same question to every one of them, I believe the answer that you would get from all of them is going to be the same. Very little. Just like I indicated that under the old 50A, the number of applications that actually came before judges to look at things was very, very minimal over the years. So that creates another question that we all have to ask ourselves. If there isn't a lot of discipline out there, the next question that I think needs to be asked is, well, how many complaints are there a year? And what happens with the complaints?
They get ignored.
And okay,
Just leave it right there.
just hold on. That's just a question that I feel, because in the end, people come to me, and people ask me, well, Mr. District Attorney, how many complaints did you receive on officers this year? How many times did, I think, John, what have you called me like one time? One time in 6 years that he had an incident that needed to be discussed with me. And I can tell you, over the years, it's about 1 or 2 a year, at best, that any police department contacts and says, we have an issue. Most of the time, their chief, their local town board, their police commission, group of people, or their police commissioner deals with it. And I think that's where you need to focus a lot of energy on who's on your police commission, who's your police commissioner, who's your chief is, and what your town board is doing. John, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, but perfect. That leads us into a great topic, unless someone else has a comment.
I did actually, because I spoke to Lieutenant Tholen, I hope I said that right, today extensively, and I do appreciate you guys. I hate to use the word envy, but I wish even though I am a big part of the city of Middletown, I'm also a big part of the town of Wallkill. And if they just did half of what you guys did, I would be happy, but we're not there yet. And you guys have things like the Junior Police Academy, that I think is a phenomenal program for the 6th to 7th and 8th graders. I wish that could be extended to a junior cadet program for teens. I'm not sure how you guys are able to expand on that program, but you grab a good demographic of children that are still being able to be molded and respect what you guys do. But teenagers are the ones that are going to quickly become adults, and I don't feel that they have enough programs in place that will help them. One of the things that helped me as a youth was the Police Athletic League. They used to have boxing, they used to have weightlifting, and I used to have work out with cops. That's what I did. And it was a great experience that made me appreciate who they were as a person and what they were up against. So I don't know if that can be considered an action item, but I sincerely believe, especially with such a very intense and extensive park and recreation center that you guys are going to have, to try to implement it and have somehow also be able to get those teens to the location, because I don't think that's a very close location for teens to get to, but have a program where perhaps it runs after school. You get teens that are at risk or teens that need that extra mentorship and work out with them. Something that, if you ever gone to with a workout buddy, you guys have conversations, you guys talk, you really open up when you're working out. I'm not sure if you guys do, but I know that that's an experience that people have. I also with Nigel said, Lieutenant Thielen told me about the Citizens Police Academy, and I thought that was a great idea. I don't know if it started, I don't know if it's implemented, but in that type of academy where the Right to Know Act, like you guys put this on us for us to review, but a lot of people are ignorant to what our rights are. Mm-hmm. I had a little bit of a sharing of my experience with the lieutenant, that my experience hasn't all been positive with police officers. And I do believe it's because of race or ethnicity. They see me and they see all their stereotypes come forth. They may have pulled me over for a tail light, but as soon as they see my face, they're asking, where am I going, where am I coming, what do I do for a living to drive a BMW, whatever the questions that become, now you're making me feel uncomfortable. Now I feel like you're profiling me. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I would love to know, and I never get a straight answer, is what goes into your criminal profiling. Because racial profiling is not legal, right? It's unconstitutional. But I feel like criminal profiling is just another word for racial profiling. Mm-hmm. What is it that you guys are looking for that makes someone fit a criminal description, that makes you ask these additional questions? I don't know. And that's where I feel like when I see these events on video, that it goes from, well, why are you pulling me over? And they're like, well, now it's not about the tail lighting, it was about a whole bunch of other stuff that had nothing to do with pulling them over, but now it becomes a very hostile situation because now I'm defensive. Now I'm like, why are you asking me this? This is none of your business, and now the cop thinks I'm hiding something. How is that? Where does it go where you're supposed to be, instituting whatever traffic laws that you're trying to apply against me or in the protection of everybody else, but now what I do for a living or if I have drugs in my car is a question of taillight that's broken. This is where I'm like, this maybe, Lieutenant Thielen went in on explaining the suspicions that arise for the additional questioning, but sometimes I feel like, is it really necessary? Because again, do we want to create that environment where now my negative perception of a police officer is he's racist? That's it. As soon as you ask me anything else other than what you pulled me over for, I know you're racially profiling, and that's it. That's how I'm going to teach my children. I'm going to teach my children that this is how you respond, and you don't have to answer questions because whatever they pulled you over for, that's it. Give me the ticket, and that's it. Let me go. And that's really how I believe that kids need to be taught. But if that's the wrong approach, then if this Citizens Police Academy can teach it better and teach it in a form where not only adults but also young teens and maybe even maybe do it one night for families to understand why you guys are going above and beyond pulling me over for a taillight.
So you asked a lot of different questions there.
No, I'm sorry, but it's a legit scenario.
Yeah. I can swing around on a couple of them, and you're going to have to bring me back forward. So this is some Police Academy. It was something I wanted to speak of when Bishop Rollins brought something up about before with the list. And just to go back to the list, they are actionable items. They are things that we are doing to see a result at the end. Do we see that result today? We might. We're dealing with the young group right now. We're seeing the increase in support for the programs. We're seeing the outpour of support for the program. So we're seeing there's some positiveness there. But there's still more to do, like you said. But again, it goes back, I think there's a lot of education as well.
at being more targeted, because then we can identify what's working. And then when we talk, we won't hear the cries for defunding as opposed to reallocating. So then those dollars can go where they're actually making a difference. And maybe this particular program, it's nice, but if it's not giving us the results, then you know what, we can direct those dollars to something that's gonna give.
I think we need to give time for results with anything else. And if I sat here and told you that we had one program, you would argue back with me, you would need more. No, I'm saying we're trying to hit at multiple levels, so it's not a one facet approach. We don't want one avenue, one conduit. We want to hit community in as many areas as we can. Citizens Police Academy, it is not in place yet. This is something that we're hoping to have in place this winter. We've already done some research on it. I have staff that are putting together some guidelines on what we would do, and it's exactly what you're saying, is to get more involvement from our adult community members, our young adult, our adult members, to get some education, to allow people to understand what we go through the training, to educate people. And I think that kind of goes back to what I had mentioned earlier about my conversation with Pastor or Bishop Williams about trying to get into the schools to have these conversations so we can educate people. Just real quick on the vehicle stop. It may start to you as just a vehicle stop for a taillight. From day one in the police academy, police officers are taught that the vehicle stop is one of the most dangerous interactions with the community you will ever have. You in your car, you're minding your business, you're going from ShopRite to your house. You may have a tail light out. You may have ran a stop sign, a red light, not used your turn signal. That officer has no idea who you are, what you've done. There's many videos out there, many stories out there where an officer has stopped a vehicle for a simple traffic infraction, and upon approach to that vehicle, or as they took the credentials of that driver and turned to walk away, have been shot dead without any warning. Because we have no idea who is in that car. So those additional questions try to create a rapport, to break some conversation, to kind of let the officer at ease to know, hey, the person I'm dealing with is a legitimate person, that it is just a minor traffic infraction. Unfortunately, I have to disagree with your approach to teach your children that. I think you have to teach the children respect, and I'll get into that with some of our training, that if we want to earn respect, we have to give respect and vice versa. So simple question, if I were to ask you where you came from this evening, is that biased?
Yes, I do. Yes, it is. It is,
It's a
absolutely.
simple conversation.
Because especially that, the questions I've been asked, and to me is, what am I doing in that particular neighborhood? Where am I coming from? Why would I be in, if I'm from, Middletown, why am I in town Wallkill? Kind of situations that, I'll give you an example of the question. And what does it matter? It has nothing to do with your traffic stop. Maybe you can ask me, how's your day going? That makes me comfortable,
You can do that, and there could also be more to that vehicle stop. It could be that a crime occurred where your vehicle matches the description. There's other elements, so that simple conversation could go a lot different than if we're met with resistance right away. And don't get me wrong, sometimes the officer comes up with an attitude. I know that. I've been stopped by police as well, and I know sometimes they come up and, we are human. We have good days, we have bad days. Sometimes we have an attitude. I understand that. But also a lot of times we're met with an attitude because people are frustrated. One, they don't want to get a ticket because normally it costs them money. It's going to delay wherever they're going because now they've stopped. So there's a whole bunch of other aspects of it we could talk about forever, but I think
Well, do you know attorneys tell you that the best thing you could do when you're pulled over is just keep your mouth shut? Because whatever you say can incriminate you. So if you're asked, did you know you were speeding? And I'm like, well, I guess. I don't know. Then that actually incriminates you.
Yep.
Real quick, I don't want us to forget this question, and I don't want us to bypass this situation. The question is asked, and Chief, you are one of the people that head this area. So when you get a complaint, how's it handled, what happens, all that good stuff?
No problem. We're going to bring that slide up real quick. Athletics. We do have a couple athletic programs. There's a boxing program through Parks and Rec. Some of my officers participate in it. They box with the kids. The teen center at night for teenagers. It is a great resource. The police department goes down at least once a year. This year again with COVID. We go down, we play basketball. Moochie's brother MCs the event. It's an amazing event for us to interact with teenagers at an athletic program. Anthony Williams, we've been trying to get together to create some type of police athletic league, some type of interaction. One of my school resource officers is actually signed on to run cross-country with the high school kids this fall. So we are trying those shotgun approach. Again, we're just trying to reach out to as many people as we can. So come back around to civilian complaints.
So before you go there, I wanted to give a number that I saw a number. So on your website, Middletown website, there's a document that can be downloaded that gives you, it's basically download about complaints about police interactions. So from 2015 to now, that document has been downloaded 1,492 times. So that doesn't mean there's been 1,492 complaints, but that document has been downloaded within the past 5 years 1,492 times, meaning that almost 1,500 people have had negative interactions with Middletown police.
Not necessarily. That could be inaccurate, because tonight I went on the website myself and downloaded that document just to make sure, in case someone asked me a question about how to get to the document on my website, that I was familiar to have that conversation.
Chip, why don't you go through the civilian oversight so you guys have a better grasp of what the process is and what we're going to recommend be changed regarding civilian complaints too. And you already know that part of the national movement is to have a national database of officers that do bad things. And that's on the federal level. We can't legislate that in Middletown. And we can't legislate some of the state changes that you're recommending. But what we can do is regulate and the chief will go through, and I think it's an important part of it, is what happens when Lizette gets pulled over and she doesn't like the attitude by the police officer or something more serious. So let him go through that, and then we'll have some questions.
So as I've mentioned, and you've heard a
And
little bit.
before I do that, the board members out there, I think there is a microphone too, so if you guys have a question, okay, please feel free to just get up and ask the question.
So we do have civilian oversight of our police department. There is a police commission. It is a 5-member police commission. The mayor is the head of the police commission, and there's 4 appointed members. By charter, there could only be 2 people from each political party at any given time, excluding the mayor's political party. 4-year terms, and they overlap. Not all 4 commissioners leave at the same time, nor do all 4 come at the same time. There's an overlap, so it's like every 2 years. Each police commissioner is confirmed by a common council and is sworn, takes an oath of office. The primary duties of the police commission is the hiring, firing, promotions, discipline, and policy making of the police department. They review investigations and complaints. There's monthly meetings that are open to the public. This is all posted on the city's website as well. They're the 3rd Thursday of every month, 4:30, here in City Hall. Over the last several months, there were no meetings due to the COVID and the restrictions put on. The members of the Police Commission, as I mentioned, are Mayor DeStefano, Police Commissioner Miguel Rodriguez, who is also the Council President, Commissioner Jean Vignola, Commissioner Deborah Mills, who is here in the audience with us, and Commissioner Sean Sullivan, who is here in the audience with us. It's part of ensuring the accountability and transparency of the police department. I'm just going to go right through this PowerPoint slide because we will get to that policy as well. You mentioned, Lizette, the right to know. We have policy in place here in the Middletown Police Department that requires officers to provide their name whenever they are asked. Everybody that is in uniform, every police officer that is in uniform has a name tag. It's required by policy. In the slide above you, it'll talk about the actual policies to show that these have been in place since I've been here. If someone doesn't provide their name to you upon request, that's something for us to look into. That can generate a personnel complaint. So within the police department, there's many, many situations that could institute or start or commence a personnel complaint or an investigation. And I'll break it down in a couple levels. So there's mandatory internal investigations. This is where a supervisor within our organization is required to initiate an investigation. An injury to a person in police custody, injury to a third party as a result of police action, which includes injury or alleged injury associated with the use of force, injuries to officers, officer-involved motor vehicle accidents, and it's a multi-layered system. So it starts with whatever the incident may be. The supervisor of that person, the lowest level supervisor or sergeant, would be the person to initiate that investigation. They have to gather all of the facts, video, photographs, statements, witness names and statements, GPS data from our vehicles. All this will be compiled. They do a summary review of it to make sure they have all the facts that they believe are pertinent to that. They then complete a report, give it to their lieutenant. Now, one of these lieutenants, there's another layer of lieutenants that they are overseen by. That lieutenant then reviews the entire case to ensure that it is complete, to see if there's anybody else that needs to be interviewed, any other evidence that needs to be collected. They then compile and do a cover report as well. They submit that whole packet to one of the bureau commanders. Depends on if it's a patrol situation, a detective situation, it goes to the appropriate bureau commander. They then assess that whole entire complaint or investigation again, make sure it follows and falls within the guidelines of our policy and procedure, the law. If, God forbid, we have to speak with the district attorney about the circumstances, they would include that. They then do a more detailed document report to me, where I would then, again, get the opportunity for the fourth supervisory oversight to review, make sure all the documents are there, all the evidence is there, everybody that's involved that should have been interviewed is there, and then I get to say whether or not I agree or disagree with what's been presented, or I could kick it back and tell them I need more or I want more. And after I am done and satisfied with it, I will then forward it to the police commission for the final overview of it. So then you have the civilian overview. It starts with a complaint or an injury or whatever it may be, does the full circle all the way back around to the police commission. Similar with personnel complaints. If someone makes a personnel complaint against anybody in the police department, we start it with that process. By policy, depending on the nature of the complaint, the first line supervisor has the ability to sit down with the complaining person and have a conversation. Sometimes it could be addressed right then and there on that level, where they could, maybe there's an explanation, maybe there's a misunderstanding, maybe it's something that could be rectified right then and there. Some people want to go above and beyond that, and they want to actually make a formal personnel complaint, which would go to paper, it goes onto a report. And there's multiple ways of doing that as well. Online, as you saw, you could download it. You could email one of the lieutenants, you could email myself, you could email the commissioners, you could go right to the mayor's office. Some people come in, we sit down with them, we do the personnel complaint. Some people don't want us to participate in the process, they want to take the complaint form, we give it to them, they leave. Sometimes they come back with it, sometimes they don't. The ones that actually come back, however we get them, that same exact process is followed, where it starts as the sergeant reviews it, gets all the facts to the lieutenant, to the bureau commander, to the chief, back to the commission. And with the personnel complaints, in addition, each one of them has to be categorized. And they're actually, at the end, they're given a title. They're either exonerated, unfounded, not sustained, sustained, withdrawn by complainant, closed without investigation or finding, or a policy failure. So they're categorized as one of these items. I'll just go into some of I went back to 2017. These are the official complaints that we have on paper. And we are probably more apt at taking a complaint that probably doesn't need to be a complaint than we are ever to turn anybody away. I don't recall us turning anybody away. If it's happened, it hasn't been brought to our attention. 2017, 9 official personnel complaints were made. 9. I'm going to go back real quick to some stats. 2017, Middletown Police Department handled 43,653 calls for service. 43,000 documented contacts, police contacts in the community. And there's going to be additional ones when the officers are out of the car engaging somebody. There are 43,653 documented contacts in 2017. Out of those contacts, there's 9 personnel complaints. 9. And you could go down the list here. Unprofessional conduct. We sustained that. We found that officer was unprofessional, and they were addressed. So it's not like we're sugarcoating it. We're not saying the officers are always right.
I'm sorry, Chief, when you say they were addressed, what happened? And how do the people know that it happened?
Okay, standing here in front of you tonight, I could not tell you what that specific one was. So it wouldn't be fair to me to just generalize and say. So being that it was sustained, that person was counseled in some form or fashion. And there's a procedure for counseling as well, as far as Sometimes you could do a verbal or written counseling. Sometimes it's got to be more formalized, where someone loses some time, goes without pay, maybe loses vacation. It depends on the circumstances. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's very circumstantial. The officer's history, their performance, that all goes into play as well. If it's their first offense, second offense, all that goes into play. The next one, unprofessional off-duty conduct. So it's not just on-duty stuff we're concerned about. We're concerned about off-duty. Not to get into all the details about it, but the situation that DA Hoovler mentioned before about me calling him, that was based on an off-duty situation. One of the officers engaged in some type of conduct that was off-duty. Fortunate, the officer does not work for us anymore. He's gone. Because you're representative of Middletown Police on and off duty. So our policies, very extensive, are for on and off duty. Retaliatory police action, unfounded. Excessive force, exonerated. Exonerated means it was justified based on the circumstances. All those layers of supervision found that those actions were justified. It could be that the person didn't like what happened, but by law, they fit into the guidelines of the use of force requirements or abilities. Workforce or workplace harassment, it was withdrawn. Even stuff that is withdrawn, we don't just forget about it. We continue our investigation. Because sometimes people withdraw things for a multitude of reasons, but it doesn't mean we're just going to stop doing what we're doing. We have to do the due diligence for the organization, for the community. False arrest, close without investigation or finding. Unethical conduct, close without investigation. Intimidation, close without investigation. Just a little side note there. Those last three, made by one person based on one incident. The person was not happy with their police conduct and made a formal complaint about every officer that was involved in that. So we didn't take it as one. We broke it down. We took 3 personnel complaints on that one incident. And that's closed without investigation or finding. If we go back up to that, that means the investigation cannot be completed or a finding cannot be reached. This classification will be used in cases where the complainant refuses to cooperate with the investigation or other circumstances in which the investigation cannot be properly completed. Sometimes people are angry when they first encounter us. They make a complaint, and then when we go to follow up with them to get additional details, they refuse to cooperate. We could do only so much with those. Like I said, stuff that are withdrawn or anything, we do as much as we can. If someone's not willing to follow up with us and give us the additional details. 2018, 7 personnel complaints. In 2018, Middletown Police handled 37,470 calls. That's, again, encounters, 7 personnel complaints. I'm not going to read through them all. 2019, again, 7 personnel complaints. These are all documented. They're kept. We don't get rid of them. There's layers of investigative measures that go into these because we know that our perception in the community is important. Like, we have to police our own. We can't police the community without policing our own. There are what are termed technical violations of policy. They're minor things that can be corrected with verbal discipline or maybe a counseling or maybe a little bit of training, such as someone, maybe they're showing up for briefing a few minutes late. We'll have a conversation. Maybe there's something really going on in that person's life that we don't know about, that we have to have that conversation to find out. Maybe there's something more to it. Maybe someone didn't sign out the proper equipment. They're technical things that we'll deal with in-house on I don't want to say an everyday basis, but on a more regular basis. And we address those items as well.
Chief, how many of those are also including state police and sheriffs?
These are only...
Some of the people, when you say 43,000 calls, I know in some instances our people here in Middletown have to deal with being stopped by state police, and perhaps even some instances where they're stopped by Orange County sheriffs. So you don't have any jurisdiction over them, so we probably should make sure that what you're identifying is Middletown only, or if there are other complaints, because when state police come in, or if Orange County sheriffs are part of it, that the community knows the difference.
So, good question. The numbers that I am giving and that I am discussing are City of Middletown records. They have nothing to do with a state trooper, a sheriff's department, any other municipality. If and when the other organizations come in, if we're doing a partnership type enforcement, we are normally assigning one of those officers with a Middletown officer. So any interactions with the community will be documented through the Middletown record system. If a sheriff's deputy or state police comes to the city and does their own enforcement, that would be handled through their own organization. We don't take any type of statistical number for that. It doesn't get blotted as a call for us. It doesn't count as an arrest for us, anything like that. That would be something that they take. They have jurisdiction within the state or within the county.
Chief, can the Rabbi Rubenstein would like to ask a question, or a comment?
I just, well,
Is it on?
Is it on?
nope. Hello?
There we go.
You can come up to the podium if you want to, that might be easier.
Here, yours,
So I just want to first say thank you so much for your service and the Middletown Police Department. We really appreciate all you've done for Temple Sinai in particular and for this community as a whole. And I think this police department proves over and over again that it's a model in our area and locally, and I think even further than that in terms of what can be possible. We really appreciate the pop-up barbecues. We see them. I live, around the corner from here, and we see it, and my wife and I are very, very impressed by everything you do. And so I want to start off by saying that because I really, really do appreciate everything you do, and we're one team, That being said, I think there are places where we can do some work. Where I see an issue here in particular is that there are the first person who sees when a complaint is offered, the first person who investigates it is the sergeant, then the lieutenant, and then I forgot one more police person, and then you. That's 4 different police officers who filter the information before it gets to you, right? And so that's an issue.
Well, let's explore it. What's the issue?
So for me, I think what I'm seeing as an issue, and again, I say this with the utmost love, really, really. What I see the issue being is that when you have a group of people, there's groupthink, right? It's a psychological concept where people tend to defend their team, their brothers. And, being a policeman is a very, I could never do what you guys do. It's unbelievable to get out there and put yourself in dangerous situations. And I know you protect each other, and that's really important. But there could create a psychological issue, right? It's almost involuntary, where you end up protecting the insiders, right? So there are 4 opportunities.
But
Right?
why do you, every department, including major departments, have internal affairs. They're not civilians. The process that they use is more like an internal affairs operation, and it begins and ends with civilian. You believe it's being done in a vacuum, but on the more serious things, all of those come back to the Civilian Commission with the opportunity to review those documents and review those reports. And the civilian has the opportunity to come to the Civilian Commission and voice their concerns. So I don't know, because I've heard that nationally too in some of the debates, but what's the solution to that? Because on a more serious crime, say there's a police officer kills someone, that doesn't go to the Middletown Police Department. I think that goes to either, I believe now it's going to be one of the Attorney General.
Yeah, they just changed it.
They just changed it.
That laws didn't
But
pass as well.
What would you, as a community member, expect that Lizette was pulled over and the police officer acted inappropriately, and with the assumption that we don't have body cameras, which is going to change?
Yeah.
So,
That's the key.
But in the current situation, what do you think a police department should do when they receive Lizette's complaint?
It's a really good question you ask, and I think that I would love to hear more about the civilian council. I know you're probably going to get to that. It's hard to interrupt you. I want to hear all your information. But I think what needs to happen is there needs to be an external counsel right from the beginning. There needs to be an external, from the police department, investigation from the beginning that's made up of people who are not police officers. And the reason, the reason is because, again, you're giving those opportunities the whole entire time for bias to set in.
But aren't you ignoring the Civilian Police Commission?
Well, I want to hear more about the Civilian Police Commission, but I think, and I want to know about it, I really do. But that's not the only thing I'm talking about.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about, so I hope to hear about that. I hope the Civilian Commission has teeth. I mean,
Fire, discipline, promotion? no more teeth in a police committee. This is not a civilian review board that makes a recommendation. The chief cannot fire someone.
Right.
The chief cannot demote someone. The chief cannot promote someone. Only the Middletown Police Commission can do that, and it's made up of myself and 4 others
Right.
that are not police officers. So I think what you're asking for is already in place. Now, do we go out and conduct an investigation? In that sense, no. There is a responsibility. We have confidence in that supervisory level that operates within, you're assuming that they're all the workers on different levels. They take an oath to do certain things, but there's also a document trail throughout the whole process. So if the sergeant says that he interviewed person A, and then person A decides and said something different than what is written down on the report, that person will have the opportunity to come in and tell us, I never said that. That's not true. So we can base on, and I'm talking about bigger issues. What we are changing is, and we usually only address as a commission the larger issues. We allow the department to handle the smaller issues, the complaint by a behavioral complaint or an attitude complaint, which we all get and which we all have. But we are now going to require that at each meeting, all of the complaints, whether it's a complaint about a comment at a traffic stop, or if it's a complaint of some kind of police brutality, that they all come back to the commission, and the commission will either accept or reject the chief's recommendation. So we are going to make that one change. But I think what you're arguing for is already in place.
I don't think it's really quite in place, because it's a different supervisory afterwards, looking over material that's already been gained. Committees and commissions might not look through and comb through every single detail.
So you would like us to select a private attorney
Well, I think there should
do an investigation?
I think there should be a private group that's set up, that's trained to investigate, to do internal investigation.
Selected by who?
By the government,
Well, isn't that what's in place?
by the community.
We did that.
Because you're not understanding exactly.
No, I follow you, but I don't see the opportunity
That's at the end.
for another level of involvement. Most communities don't have civilian police commissions if the Middletown Police Commission did not have the teeth that it has, I think you have an argument. But as I said, the police department does not do promotion. They do not do hiring. They're not the final word on discipline.
Respectfully, I understand what you're saying. I really do, and I'm very proud.
I'm very argumentative sometimes, too.
I can be very.
I agree with that.
argumentative, too. It's a
But
big
go ahead,
part of
I'm
our
sorry.
Tradition. So, I totally understand what you're saying, and I'm very proud of the Civilian Commission, and that's wonderful, as I said in the beginning. But I again think data gathering is only being done internally. It's being supervised by civilians afterwards, by the commission afterwards, and by the civilian council. But as long as data gathering is always done by internally in the police, you're going to have psychological groupthink issues in terms, because again, civilians aren't going to supervise all of the different things, even though they have teeth, even though they have the ability to do so.
I strongly disagree with your.
You can disagree.
assertion
I'll give
there.
an example. My first time meeting Chief Iwanchu was about 2 years ago, and I'm sure you remember that very colorful conversation, because I was very upset. Right now, we are all aware, because we see it in social media, that you have people who call the cops on Black people, and they're white, and they know, they call them, I don't want to say because we have Ms. Karen Cisco here. And I said to him, a white woman called and falsely accused someone of harassment. Your officer took this harassment via email and had a warrant sent out for an arrest over something that was here. And wait, let me finish. And I know.
It's a different police department.
This was here. This was the complaint was done in the city of Middletown. And I said the complaint wasn't even valid. You guys shouldn't even take complaint. But when we put the complaint for harassment because the person was harassing, a white person's harassing a Black person on a false charge.
But
that
isn't
person
that
should
what the
be-
courts are for, to
and
determine what's
then-
false and what's not false?
But they took the
They're
complaint.
required to take complaints. They
Then-
take complaints, they don't make a decision at
So, but they
that
didn't
level.
take
But
the-
I don't want to get into a personal
I know, but I'm
grievance
giving an
thing.
example. He tried to put a complaint in, and his complaint was ignored. The police did not take his complaint. They were like, sorry, we're not going to take the complaint. I was like, why would you take the complaint? I thought that was your job. And it was like, oh, this is something that's family court, like, this has nothing to do with us. And that decision was put on, I'm not sure who, but we complained to you. And we're like, yeah, I kind of agree. This has nothing to do with us. This, take it to family court. Like, yeah, but you took the original complaint from a white woman, but you wouldn't take it from a black man. And it was a false complaint. So and this is where it gets, I can't even, and I told you, I cannot even imagine how many complaints from black Americans have been filed that were ignored, that were dismissed, that were like, yeah, we're not taking your complaint. Because it happened to someone that was close to me, and it didn't make sense to me why you wouldn't take it as seriously as a white woman's complaint.
All right, first of all, I don't think all the facts are being presented accurately here this evening. There's other factors in this, there's other police departments involved, and I don't have the facts to discuss that. We're not here tonight to talk about a personal situation, so.
This
let's
is
bring
more
it back
policy,
around to
a
the-
policy meeting, not personal issues. If you've got something you want to address on a personal level about actions by the police department, that would be something. We're trying to address policies and procedures and moving forward. And so maybe the rabbi, you can finish with your comments?
Because I have a couple of things. So I think we should look at that, and we shouldn't
Okay.
end that discussion just in this meeting, and we should hear what you have to say about the civilian council. I really want to hear that. But just a couple of other things that I think are really, really important. I'd love to hear about the racial breakdown before the test, and and not just afterwards, right? Because it seems to be implied that people aren't passing this test, right? But I would love to hear the numbers.
No, I don't think it's just they're not passing the test. I think they're not taking the test.
That's what I wanted to know.
Mr. Massey is here, and he did a lot of the outreach. He's the civil service director, and he worked with Bishop Rollins on
So the proportions are
recruiting.
the
So,
same between, in terms of race before and after, right? Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to know.
yeah,
that.
but we have an idea on that, but I don't think they break it down. Mr. Massey, they don't break it down by numbers for us, do they?
I didn't hear the
You want to know the racial breakdown of applicants
So it's not.
Oh, I know.
for the exam?
I understand what he's asking.
Yeah.
Even applying.
If Bishop Rollins will remember, we went through this at one time.
Back and forth.
And if you want your police department to be more reflective of your community, I actually need your help. I can't make people take a test. I can't bring them in.
That's right.
Bishop Rollins and I, we, for about 6 months, we met with different groups. I sat with them, with obviously Bishop Rollins.
We did.
We went over the test. I did everything we could possibly do. I said, please, all you have to do is sign up to take this exam. It begins and ends there. If you don't take the exam, you can't get on our.
Right, but I think what the rabbi was asking, the breakdown, do
I
we
can
get a
tell you.
breakdown from the state on the applicants,
Well, I know-
you know how many are African-American, how many are Latino?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Excuse me, I got a dry throat. When Bishop Rollins and I did that, that was a test, not the 2018 test. I believe it was the 2014 test. And we had 478 applicants. And if my memory serves me, there were 36
Very small.
African-American and Latinos that took it. So it was once again, not to be redundant, but if you don't take the test, so
Okay,
you people
that
could.
was the question. That was the question. So let the rabbi continue. We understand. It's all you wanted.
It was just informational. Okay, so I'll be quick because I know I'm taking a lot of time here. But so a couple of other things. It's great that there is these monthly meetings, but I don't know. It's one thing if you just announce it on Facebook, but I think they just need to be more public and more 21st century.
Social media.
Social media. I mean, an idea
Is
that.
anybody here signed up for Nixle?
No, I'm not talking, Nixl's great, by the way, I love
Yeah,
Nixl.
but Nixle is not only police notifications, it's public announcement notifications, it's media notifications.
I'm not talking about Nixl necessarily, though,
Right.
but like, what I'm talking about, what I'd like to see, and the GMIC was talking about this, I was talking that with a person of color, as a minister also as well, and teaming up in this, and having monthly meetings on Zoom and on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
Of hearing, anybody completely open, who have some kind of issues, some kind of complaint, some kind of, where pastors and clergy, or impartial, we're not police, we're kind of some weird in between, where we listen, where we're a multicultural body. We'd like to start seeing that happen. It seems like it's very similar to what's happening already in the monthly meetings, although that's on a commission level. But this is even before all of those things. So where if it has to be something that would help at least with some of the internal investigations beforehand on a civilian side. So I think that's something that we want to see. I might talk to some of my partners here eventually in terms of working on that and create some more accountability in terms of social media. That's how our generation kind of interacts on
Instagram,
Facebook Live,
Twitter.
Zoom.
You realize you're on virtual town hall today.
I know, it's just, but it's not the same.
Yeah, your following is not my following, which is not the rabbi's following.
Right.
I understand, but at what point is it your responsibility or Moochie's responsibility with 845 or the media's responsibility to come to a meeting and be involved and tell it? We televise our meetings on Channel 20. If you have such an interest in a common council meeting, for example, and we're doing more committee meetings now on Channel 20, what's the problem with flipping on Channel 20 or going online and doing a virtual town? Why are you trying to shift the burden to the city to get you involved in the city business? If I was you, and if I was a member of the Interfaith Council, and I wanted to be more involved, I would sign up for the monthly meeting and I would get involved. I mean, you're asking us to do more outreach than is possible. I think we do so much outreach now. We have open policies. The chief, if a person wants to talk to the chief of police, all they got to do is call him. He meets with them. If you want to come to a meeting, we go to meetings. If you want us to go to your church or your synagogue or your mosque, we go. We go where we're invited to go. I don't know how much more outreach that we can do. Moochie, I've appeared on Moochie's show every time she's asked me on 845.
So I love the outreach you're already doing, but we
I
obviously...
don't know what else we could do, and the fact that you're stating that there's something more you should do, we're doing them. We're doing social media. We're doing virtual town halls. We're doing those things. You have to tune in.
Mayor, I think what you're looking at is a little, I had somebody call me today, I had a young man call me today, and I think there's some differences, some generational differences that are taking place. For example, much of the information that I glean, I'll do the research, so forth, they get their information from the Breakfast Club. And that's what they're talking about. And they will sit there, they'll watch the Breakfast Club. I mean, you may not even know what the Breakfast Club is, but they'll get a ton of information.
I don't miss too many breakfasts, but I would be more than happy. I would be more than happy to come
We're not talking about that breakfast,
to a free
but
breakfast
they
for the
know-
Breakfast Club and speak
But
on
they get-
issues.
But they get their information from the Breakfast Club, and that's how they're informed.
You meet you where you're at.
Okay.
And that's what they're-
So
that's what
let's
they're
get more creative. So let's not knock what you guys are doing. You guys are doing it. So okay, let Moochie step in and say what we could do now. Okay. So since I do music and do concerts, let's do a more concert. This is what we get in now. We could do more concert events and bring them in with their stuff and bring it to the people's
drop
forefront. We can use
What does that mean? I don't know, with more concert events.
So what I'm saying is my platform is Reporting Live 845. I do music on my platform. I do interviews. I do events, right? So now it's time, you asking us, what can you guys do? And we don't want to keep putting the burden on you because it is on the community too. So now let's start community. That's where you guys come in. We start taking our events that we do, the platform we use, and start bringing them in now. So when we have our events, our personal
Exactly.
our
That's it.
personal events, our fashion shows, our what else we do, our parties at night, whatever we do, you know, how our women rock concerts, you know, we bring our 845 artists in.
anybody ever said no?
We'll start utilizing them.
Has
to
anybody
save-
ever said no from the city to appear?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
So that's what we'll start doing now. So we don't want, that's just the first
You
suggestion.
invite us in. Go ahead.
We're gonna do stuff now, and we're gonna bring them in.
Yep.
To our area, and our hometown. Okay, so that's the first suggestion, that's more outreach, that's what we'll do as a community.
So lastly, I also want to say, I mean, my wife loves
See what you started?
Instagram, and I hate, what'd you say?
See what you started?
That's what I'm here for, right?
Go ahead.
I'm not on Instagram, but every young person is on Instagram. Instagram is the
Twitter,
most popular
Instagram.
social media. This is not being streamed on Instagram right now.
We're on Twitter, I think, right? We're streaming on Facebook. I know that. But I think, you know, with all due respect, I think there's a responsibility for people who want to get knowledge on an event or things that's going on in the community to put it on them. We're a small city, 28,000 people, struggling financially. We put more money into recreation programs and youth programs than any community in the Mid-Hudson Valley. We do more police outreach than any community in the Hudson Valley. We do more housing initiatives than any community in the Hudson Valley. And at some point, there has to be some personal responsibility for people who want to get involved. Fred Williams back there said, I'm going to get involved. He ran for the school board. Anthony Williams over there, he has ideas about recreation programs. So I said, Anthony, I sent him a Facebook message last week, would you serve on the Recreation Commission? He said, I'll be more than happy to, and we're going to talk about the appointment tonight. That's how you get involved. You get involved by voting, you get involved by registering for the census, you get involved by inviting us to the 845 on your platform and asking me any question. There was no predetermined question. She could ask me anything she wanted.
Again-
And the same thing with the police chief. But there's also, it's a two-way street when it comes to responsibility.
I think
And-
that's why we're here. I mean, that's why I'm here today, and I
It's a
think that's
solution.
why we're here right now. We're just,
But streaming live on what the hell did
I
you call
love
it?
what Middletown is doing.
Twitter or-
I said that I really meant that very, very seriously. I love what, we're just trying to make it better because people are upset, and you can see that the relationships are frayed, and there are people getting hurt, right, across the country. So we're doing everything possible. We have to, people are getting hurt. People are getting killed. So, like, there's never enough.
Exactly.
Because until people are
Agreed,
getting hurt.
and that's why we're here.
We don't have to, like, get upset or, like.
I'm not upset. I told you, I'm argumentative. That's part of the purpose of being here, is the give and take.
I'm just trying to be productive to make our city.
No, I
better.
appreciate it,
That's what I'm trying
and
to
I
say.
apologize if I raise my voice.
So
Would you raise hers, too?
Lastly, what I'd like to see, and I don't know if this is my last statement, because
Okay.
I know I've been here for too long, and I'd love to talk to everybody. There are two things that I'd like to see lastly, and just let me finish before you discuss them, because it takes a long time, and I'll sit down, I promise. One thing that I don't think we're going to be able to accomplish in Middletown, but I'd like to see more, is that more non-police officers reacting to 911 calls. So, if, let's say there's a homeless person who is in the street, and, we run the warming station, the GMIC, that instead of a man with a gun comes,
Arresting him.
instead it's a social worker or psychologist who, who's trained for those things, so who's responding. Because the second you bring a gun into something, like, I'm afraid of guns. Like, that's just me. When I see a gun, it's like, it's scary to me. So I can't imagine someone who's homeless.
Or have
So
mental health
that's what I'd
issues.
like to see. Number one is that there's more social workers, psychologists sent to more things. It would save money in the police department and sending people out for, you guys are too many things to too many people. You guys aren't social workers and psychologists, so I'd like to see that. And lastly, again, turning it towards us, there's no NAACP in this
fix
town. There's no, I want to be part, I want to walk with you. I mean, I want to walk with you guys as the leaders, but I don't know the organization to be part of. I don't know who to
on then.
to
You
walk
need
with.
30 members to sign up to create an organization again for the NAACP. So
No, it's
30
more
people.
than that. I'm working on it. I have a young man that already called me. The national requirements are 50.
Oh, 50 now.
New York
Okay.
State is 100.
Wow.
And
Yes,
so there's a
committed
little bit more
members.
involved in it than that. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. We need the people. In fact, your name came up, Mucci, as perhaps maybe considering being a part of it, because I don't know that the bridge has been effectively forged with the younger community, or should I say, intergenerationally, from one generation to the next. And there are some things involved there. I'm a former president, and, my grandmother was a member from 1931. But there are some things that can happen. Your predecessor worked along with me, and there's some things that we can do. So I'll be more than happy to address that.
I want to say thank you so much to Middletown.
Don't go away, though.
Oh.
Because I want to answer your point number one.
Okay.
Is that police do not want to respond to mental health calls. Right?
yeah.
They don't want to do that job. They're not trained for it. And we all agree that you don't want to have a person with a gun respond to that type of call. There is no alternative for a city to run that kind of operation. But it's you're combining big cities and little cities. The mental health program in Orange County, in this county, is run by the county. The county funds them, they get state monies, they get federal monies, wherever it comes from. They run the programs. We have a mobile mental health program, severely underfunded. The city is, in the area of domestic violence, those types of things are severely underfunded. But what the Middletown Police did a couple of years ago in response to I think it was 3 or 4 domestic violence murders, was we opened up the police station to Safe Homes, and they now have an office in there. They do the follow-up. Those things are doable. But when it comes to mobile, when it comes to mental health, we need, and we've been complaining to both the federal, state, and county government that mental health dollars have to come into a community. I'm going to give you like a statistic for...
There should be somebody hard on the force. Hospital, how do we get money for that?
In 2016, the Middletown Police Department responded to 344 mental health calls. 17, 447. 18, 460. 19, 388. And 20, as of June 13th, 369. So the Middletown Police do not want to do that. As for taking monies and reprogramming those monies, you can't do it at this point. That's the end result of a successful mental health program over a period of years. An investment by other levels of government that control those funds into mobile mental health units. When they get a call, they don't know a person is an EDP. They don't know they don't know if that person is in danger and endangering someone else or others. So normally, under almost every circumstance, the police are going to be the first responder. Would it be great to have someone from mobile mental health dispatched at the same time?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But you're talking to the wrong people when it comes to funding it, because we're on your side on that.
So I'm talking to the right person then.
No, we're on your side.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not against you.
No, but I mean,
No?
I'm not saying it in a negative way, but what the Interfaith Council of Middletown has to do, because you're very active in homelessness and you raise that issue, is you need to become an advocate on issues also. And one of those, the major issue that impacts Middletown, because of we have a large number of mental health programs operated in the city of Middletown, is we need advocacy on the other level and political pressure to get mobile mental health funded. Now, the state closed psychiatric institutions, that whole thing 40 years ago, and they shifted the burden onto the counties and onto the cities, and that burden is now, the prisons are now psychiatric centers, and your cities and your villages are now dealing with people who have emotional issues that need mental health. Drug treatment on demand's another one. Is that drug treatment, if a person's not getting treated, eventually they're going to support their habit through unlawful acts. So the police are arresting them for the unlawful act, but if a parent comes to me or calls me and said, my kid is going down the wrong path, he needs treatment, you got to help me. I can't help them. I can make a call, but I can't help them. I don't run the program. I don't have access to those monies. Our taxpayers don't have access to that money. I had one gentleman wrote a letter to me, well, you could be a model community and fund these things. We'll all be broke.
Yeah.
There's no way a city of Middletown can run a mental health program. That's why the state has broken it down on smaller counties to have the county of 400,000 people fund that program. So we would love to have your assistance. The police department, I'm going to let the chief, because I'm getting like him now, I'm talking too much. I'll let him respond to it too, and I'm not speaking for him. All I'm saying to you is, my years of experience here, I can almost guarantee you that he's going to say, we don't want to do mental health calls, but we have to. And number two, we would love to have a social worker meet us at that destination.
Mayor, how many of those people ended up in jail and how many of them were minorities?
I don't have that statistic there.
Out of that 300 and of those numbers, because you did reference that they end up having police contact, and they will end up at Orange County Jail, and our sheriffs will have to deal with them, and they are not trained to deal with them. And so
Well, they
you
become
get back.
psychiatric center.
Right, you
Prisons
get
become
to a
psychiatric
bigger, or they end up on the street. I've had a situation, they end up on the street because honors, and I've had the conversations with Chris Molinello, the CEO, honors will not keep them because there's an issue. So if they go over to the homeless shelter and they're fighting, or there's an issue, then they're not there. So now they're on the street. And that's a recipe for disaster. And we know that those issues are some of the issues that we have to address because it's a much bigger issue. Like you said, it's a policy issue, and it starts at the state, and that is where we've got to kind of pool our resources. Because I can tell you right now, it's a stigma in the African-American community in terms of mental health.
It's a stigma.
It's a huge issue. Right.
In this community, I'm sorry, I'm a preacher, so I'm not going to be as long as the mayor or the police chief. But it's a stigma in our community, period. If we go back, I'm a lifelong Middletown resident, Orange County resident. It's a stigma in our community, period. And if we be honest, our community has not had the ability to be able to control these situations or be able to help these situations exactly because of what the mayor is saying, because of the lack of funding in that area, the lack of the ability to be able. We've done the best that they've done many times over the years, things to throw Band-Aids on things and try to fix situations, but it hasn't worked. And so if I go from both my roles now, as a minister, and now as a board member of the Middletown School Board, what I see in all of this is the need for greater collaboration, greater accountability to each other, greater accountability in positions of government, in positions in the community, in positions of wherever you might be, the need for greater collaboration to use all of the resources that we have, because what sometimes I think we miss is that we do not utilize all the resources. So now, speaking from a school perspective, schools are nothing more than a microcosm of our community, is a microcosm of our society. So whatever is happening out there, you can bet that it's happening within the schools. And so there's a need for. We talk about mental health issues. We talk about social emotional learning. Let's talk about trauma-sensitive trainings, trauma-sensitive actions. All of these are needed in the schools, but it's needed in the community at large. The community at large. So while we're sitting here at the table and we're looking for an action plan and we're looking for results, I think that it's incumbent on each of us to begin to list and find out what our resources are in our community, whether it be citywide, whether it be countywide, whether it be statewide. Let's identify what our resources are, and let's utilize those resources, because none of us sitting at these tables know everything. If we knew everything, then all our problems would be solved. But I tend to believe that if you know a little something, 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 we can put our little somethings together and come up with some kind of solution to the problem.
And just to add to that, Bishop, on top of that, I feel like because there's so many different avenues in here, in the process of us finding our resources, find that what area you are in, and let's attack those areas. So we know that we have Bishop here, and we know Bishop and Freddie Williams, and we know Anthony. Their area is what? School and the youth. So let's now go and attack that. We know that you have me, myself, and you have Ms. Monk that we do media. Let's work on that. Let's change change the narrative. Let's start putting some of these things into the community's faces. Just like we post, the fabulous and the Jada Kids stuff, we should be pushing some of our resources to our people just as much. Bishop, you guys are in the Rabbi. You guys have the religious area. That's your. Let's capitalize on that avenue. I know that you work with the Salvation Army. Let's capitalize those areas. So every time we come in here, I agree with you, Bishop. Every time we come in here, not only should we have all the resources for everybody else, we should have something in that area that we can add to this action plan.
What do I bring to the table? What do we bring to the table? I applaud this particular police department in Middletown is without question the most outstanding police department that I've seen. And having grown up here, I've had issues as a black male all over Orange County growing up, and so I can tell you this, that this department is not the department it was years ago. I lived through the police chief that the mayor was talking about earlier. I lived through that time. We both did. Bishop and I are both Middletown, lifelong. And so this police department is not, and they've come and we all agree that there's always still work to do. We all agree that there is more outreach to do on both our ends. I get the mayor doesn't not understand, but it's not his generation to understand social media. That's not it. The man is a great Facebooker. I mean, I got to give you the Facebook is your medium. I don't care what no one says. You're great in that, but you might not understand Twitter. You might not understand Instagram or all of those different things. And so that's where we come together. We come together, and like you said, Moochie invites you to the health thing.
We do it all. We try to do it all, but we're 2 hours in, and we are getting some people online that would like to ask a question. So we're not going to be able to cover all the topics tonight. I hope everyone, maybe we go to 9:30. Is that acceptable to everyone? And
Great segue, man. I have one even from someone online.
so maybe we can do that, and at least maybe the people who are participating can.
To your chief, she said, what, this is from Linda Jansen. She said, what would be needed to make the Middletown Police Department a pilot program for other police departments to use as an exemplification of good community policing?
Well, I appreciate that, Ms. Jansen. I know you're very supportive of us. You come out to a lot of events. I really focus on here. I'm not ready to take our show on the road and share it. We have a lot of work here. However, one of the platforms that we have instituted over the last couple of years is the procedural justice. You've heard the mayor speak about it. I've mentioned it before. It's a great program. It's being pushed out by the Department of Criminal Justice. It's nothing that we created. We found it. Actually, Lieutenant Graziano found it at a training venue, brought it back. We fell in love with it. We instituted it. We're 2 years into it. To take our show on the road on that platform, I have my 3 instructors going around starting tomorrow teaching that program throughout this county. We are scheduled for the month of July to be in 4 different municipalities throughout the county, educating 30 police personnel at each one of those forums. We're going to do phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Mr. DA, but I believe we also have a scheduled training for some of your staff, or at least they're working on a date. So that's how we can start with pushing our ideas out to other police departments.
Maybe there's some grants that actually bring monies to our police department and work together so that our community can work together using our resources that might help other communities as well while we focus on our own.
And just one more thing on that. I'm not too proud to stand here and tell you that I steal these ideas from other places. We're not creating these. We're fortunate to go to these training venues all over, and we all come back with little pieces, and we say, like, oh my God, this worked great there, let's bring it back here. So people need to educate themselves in all aspects, including the police field. We need to educate ourselves.
Dave, did you want to say something?
Procedural justice. We've done it in the DA's office since 2010. We run one of the most successful programs anywhere in the state, in Newburgh, with the GIVE program, Gun Violence Reduction. I have the only social worker, Isabel Rojas, is my project coordinator in Newburgh. She's the only one in the state that's assigned to a district attorney's office. your chief, I will just say this, to accolades about Middletown. I don't always agree with Joe, I don't always agree with your chief, but I will say that 99.9% of the time, the City of Middletown Police Department, they get it exactly right. I think what I want to see people when I come to this, and I'll shut up the rest of the way, but we got to ask, the real hard questions are not being asked. The real hard questions of all this have to be, okay, there's a lot of outrage, there's a lot, we're talking about social media, but yet the numbers, no matter where you go in this county, the numbers do not match up to the outrage. I want to know why. Okay? I want to know why. Just as a question. The other aspect I want to talk about is that I want to know, when are we going to talk about more educational opportunity? When are we going to talk about employment opportunity? When are we going to talk about the housing? When are we going to talk about the issues that all affect why we're here tonight? Because if we're just going to sit here and talk about, and I love procedural justice, I'll tell you all about the 4 tenets of it. I'm bringing his officers in to talk to my people, to train my attorneys about what they're doing, because procedural justice in our court system, and we use focused deterrence, and Middletown kind of took a lot of stuff that we do in Newburgh, we do it a little differently than what the police do. But at the core of anything related to procedural justice is understanding the process, it's having a voice, it's mutual respect, and it's basically more so that people believe they're treated fair than the outcome that they get. And when you talk about those 4 questions, you have to talk about educational opportunities, you have to talk about employment opportunities, you have to talk about housing, you probably have to talk about transportation, you probably have to talk about a lot of other things that we're never going to get to unless we really want to talk about it. And finally, you got to be willing to talk a little bit about race. And you got to be willing, when you talk about race, to listen. You know, Mr. Rollins and I, we met last week, we talked. I met him years ago, when you were police commissioner here, I believe it was. You got to have those tough conversations about where, you know, you said you grew up here in Orange County, you've been stopped numerous times, that you know, feel, I'll bet you feel that the vast majority of those stops were unjustified. And you know what? If we take those times as educational opportunity and work it into procedural justice, then the next generation of both the person being stopped and the officer, they're going to have better respect for each other. And when they have better respect for each other, it's proven to reduce crime. So my last point that I'm saying here is, we got to talk about the real tough questions. And the tough questions are about education, they're about employment, things like that. Well, you know, why don't we have more people in the trades? You know, there was a time when in the city of Newburgh, you know, 6 out of 10 African-American men worked in the trade industry. That's all gone now. How do we bring it back? Where do we find a substitute? So those are the questions I want to talk about. I hope that sometime we get to them. But as far as your police department goes here, I'll say it. They can always do better, but finding a lot of fault with their leadership or their mayor or their council, look, I'm not best friends with all of them. We get along. We know each other. They do a pretty good job, and they do a pretty good job under tough circumstances. But again, we can always do better, and that's my 2 cents.
Well, I think we're going to get into all those issues. This is meeting night 1, and we have a lot of issues to get through to, but like housing, you know, we're going to talk about housing in Middletown. We're going to talk about housing in Orange County, and talk about why there's not, why Legoland is looking to run a bus from Middletown to Legoland, but is unwilling to build low-income housing or affordable housing next to Legoland.
The proper term would be workforce.
Workforce housing, correct. And, well, with Legoland's wages, it's going to be low-income housing, too.
Yeah, what's the difference between workforce and
But
affordable?
no, those are the points that I've raised at Orange County Chamber meetings with Legoland. And when they were trying to talk about a bus system, the inequities in transportation in Orange County. We're going to get into all those issues, but I think the opening meeting is more or less and if you read, well, let me just back up 1 second. If you just read on Mid-Hudson News yesterday, Coach USA, their failure to invest in their bus terminal project in downtown Middletown that was planned for 10 years, was put out to bid, the company was sold, and we have a horrible bus station here that goes through the county government. Steve has been supportive, and I'm hoping he's going to be very supportive when forcing Coach, who receives hundreds of millions of dollars, the bus industry and transportation fund, go look at that bus terminal and see what kind of condition it is. When you get off a bus, welcome to Middletown, New York. And so, I went to Maloney's office already. I went, Senator Metzger had a call. So we're advocating, and others have advocated or advocating for those positions also. But at the same time, I think the purpose of this is to first begin with the police and then shift into, for whoever wants to continue to listen and involve themselves on these other issues. So I appreciate your input, but you're right. And at some point, we will discuss race, if anybody wants to bring it up.
We talked about it.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. Like, this was talked about.
No, you put some on the table, but I think what he's looking for is more in-depth.
And we talked about it.
Touch on a lot of those things, and
We talked about a six-pronged approach, and that's what he's talking about. Political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. And I'm willing to go as long as you want to go, as many other times we got to come back, because we went in, and he'll tell you that in his office, it got, we got down to brass tacks. And so, because when you look at it, this is the policy-making piece of it. And so we needed to hear that. Nothing starts without politics. It's voting. I don't care how you look at it. You won't get to the economic piece. You won't get to the social piece. You won't get to the technological, the legal, or the environmental until you deal with it, because it all begins with the political piece.
right. Eileen, do we have more? Somebody take another question online, and then we'll go to you, Earl.
You have 5 people that would like to address the panel,
Okay.
and you have 7 questions.
Okay, go ahead with the first person. Who is it?
All right, that's Ty Vanderstanten.
Okay,
Ty?
go ahead, Ty.
Hi, yes, I'll make it quick to allow other people time. What I wanted to bring up is to have the Police Commission and the City of Middletown Police Department review the use of force and deadly force policies, specifically ensuring that there's a campaign called 8 Can't Wait, that their policies are incorporated with that. I won't go into extreme detail, but they include requiring de-escalation, requiring a warning before shooting, requiring exhausting all alternatives before shooting, duty to intervene in other officers using excessive force, banning shooting at moving vehicles, requiring a use of force continuum that has clear policy restrictions on the use of each police weapon and tactic, and requiring officers to report each time they use force or threaten to use force against civilians.
Okay, the chief will respond to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question, thank you. First and foremost, our use of force policy is very up to date. We are an accredited police department, which means that we're kind of overseen by the New York State Department of Criminal Justice, and we have to be.
I couldn't hear what you said, if that was a question.
Nope, just commenting. We are an accredited police department, so we have the most up-to-date policy and procedures in place. Many of those things that you just mentioned, other than the mandatory requirement to announce before you shoot, all those other things are in place in our current policy. Our policy is listed on our website. There are reporting requirements of the officers. As I mentioned earlier, there are several things that initiate from a use of force, a supervisor investigation. I don't want to take up too much more time, but I do have statistics to show that on average, total police incidents end up with about 2% use of force. Or actually, I'm sorry, police arrests end up in about 2% use of force. Total police incidents are less than 1%. End up in a use of force. Less than 0.1%. But everything that you have just mentioned is in our current policy, other than the requirement that you must announce or warn before you shoot.
Okay, thank you. Next question? Any follow-up, Ty, or is he still on?
Still here.
Yeah, I'll just note, I can send an email to make some notes on where I think maybe there are areas that there's either limited guidance or there's exceptions that kind of reduce their effectiveness.
Have you reviewed the use of force policy? Chief, is that available as public document?
It is a public online document. It's required as of, I believe, July of 2019. We're required, all police departments were required to publicly display their use of force policy. So ours is listed as a PDF document on our website.
Okay, next question?
That would be from Logan Gonzalez.
Okay.
Just give me 1 second, please. Just gotta get your name. Okay, Logan.
Logan, you there?
Logan, you just have to.
All right, all right, cool. So I was doing a little reading earlier, and I was looking at a Times Herald Record article from March of 2019. It's entitled "Crime Still Declining in Middletown." In it, the police chief noted that crime has went down 21% from 2017 to 2018. And when the article was written at the time, March of 2019, up until then, crime had gone down 23% for that duration between January and March. In the article, he mentioned that 2,932 arrests were made in 2018. Of these, my first question is, how many of these arrests were for misdemeanor offenses, and how many were for felony offenses? And of those two, how many ended up going to Orange County Jail? Second question is that why has the Middletown Police Department budget seen a $1.1 million increase in its budget from $8.7 million in 2017 to $9.9 million in 2019 with the decrease in crime? It's my personal opinion that any increase in the police budget should be redirected to social services, affordable housing, crisis counseling, and public health clinics, all long-term preventative crime measures. Thank you.
Chief, go ahead.
Okay, the first question about the statistics as far as a breakdown of felonies, misdemeanors, and who went to Orange County Jail, I am not prepared to respond to that tonight. They are not statistics that I have with me tonight. What I do have with me is a report that is generated by Department of Criminal Justice as well, which is all of our data.
I can't hear, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
All of the data that is generated by our paperwork is forwarded to the State Department of Criminal Justice, and they do reports. So what I have before us tonight, I don't have those specific points of statistics that you're asking for, but there are breakdown of demographics that I do have as far as arrests in 2018 and a portion of 2019, because that's all that is available right now, and they are not, that is not data that I generate or my department generates. That's being generated by an outside agency. The question as far as crime reduction in our budget, a majority of our budget is the increase in our budget is basically due to collective bargaining agreements, pay raises that are negotiated, and then you have increases in the cost of healthcare and other benefits that are also part of the collective bargaining agreement. When you break down our budget, like our current budget is $9,900,000. 8.7 million of that is directly to personnel services, which are the pay and benefits associated with the employees that work for the Middletown Police Department.
I believe also, Logan, that the Middletown Police Department, if you remove the 4 or 5 SRO officers that we hired after the agreement with the Middletown School District, is at its lowest in probably 20, 25 years. At one point, I believe we were in the 80s, sworn officers, and we are now at 70 today, and that includes the officers that are about 2/3 funded through the SRO program. So you have seen a direct reduction in crime and also a direct reduction in staffing over the years. But as for funding the other programs that you refer to, I mentioned housing. No community does more for subsidized housing than the city of Middletown. I mentioned the recreation program that we are moving into. Our parks programs. Mental health programs are funded by the county. The Department of Social Services programs are funded through the county. So as far as the city's ability and responsibility, I would match what we do with our limited resources to any community in the Mid-Hudson Valley. Next question, or Earl, you wanted to ask, Earl's in-house, Eileen, so we'll go back to the other two.
First, I want to say good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Just give your name, Earl, so people, I know you just as Earl, but.
Name is Errol Odom. Can you hear me clear with?
You can take the mask off if you want.
Glad you like me. Anyway, I want to thank you, Bishop Rollins, Mayor DeStefano, and the rest of the panel. I try to hold my tongue. I wanted to be here to hear what's said. I've been in this community since moving up here since 1988. Since I've been up here, I've observed things, and it was in my heart to get involved with things. I've seen a lot of things, and I see just by listening to things that's going on tonight, we're not going nowhere. We have good intentions here, but when you're still talking about the things that I faced being up here since '88, you know, not stepping on no one's toes, it's not my intentions. I'm here to keep it real, keep it 100. Number one, I heard you talking about the police department hiring of minorities. There's a lot more than just taking a test. Okay, there's a fact that these guys have to deal with people, have to carry a firearm. So there's psychological exams. A lot of our minorities have psychological problems, keeping it real. Could it be because they're single parent raised? I grew up in the projects, so I'm gonna speak on it because I know a lot of them. I deal in the community. I see a lot of things. I was a president of the NAACP for 10 years, 5 years as vice president before that. So I saw my share of things. Involved in the community, the mayor tell you, I was. I raised half the kids that are now grown men in what I did because they didn't have a father there for them. Am I proud of it? I am in a way because those grown men come and thank me for where they're at now and where they could be. The other thing, including our mayor, they didn't think I had a job because I was in the park a lot of times with the kids.
Hey.
And I was doing a lot of different
What the hell
things. You know?
What the hell's that mean?
Yeah.
I didn't think you had a job. That's not true.
Oh, come on. You found out later on in life.
You never spent money. I think I did.
Yeah, I didn't have to.
But go ahead.
I had it, you know, but anyway, you know, 40 years in the New York State court system where I seen a lot of the guys come through dealing with numerous DAs and numerous ADAs. I've seen them come and go, like I've seen the police department. The reason why I said we're still back there where I started is that everything, don't get me wrong what I'm saying, isn't a party. There was important things we need to deal with. A lot of these people are not registered voters. A lot of us, when I say people, us, are not registered voters. They can't even take 5-10 minutes to fill out, to be recognized as a person in the community. That's why we're being drained in the city. I've seen a lot. I talked to them. I run a men's basketball program where I talk to the guys and try to tell them certain things. They come to me, how do I get a job as a court officer, court clerk, or whatever, a police officer? It's not about having a clear record. We make mistakes in life. Fortunately, I had both my parents in my family, in my household. I was the only son. I had 6 sisters. But my father kept his foot on my throat. I was taught, you're either going to go this way or you're going to go that way. A lot of my friends went that way. They're either in the ground or in prison for a large part of their life. I try to save a lot of people. I'm not going to say I'm a savior, no. But one thing I'm learning, because I'm one of those who, not to say that I'm the perfect parent, but we need to talk to our children. We can't blame everything on the outside world. That's one thing we tend to do. I've been at many marches, many meetings. with certain people. I've met a lot of people in high places. But number one, we have to understand everything is not going to be a party. We have to take responsibility in things. We need to read. We need to learn things. I've been talking to my Bishop Williams, and I've been in touch talking with Bishop Rollins. I'm ready to sit down and talk to people, but you have to listen. You have to be able to read before you speak on things. No, there's a lot of things to becoming a police officer, any law enforcement. It's psychologicals. You can't just throw a gun in somebody's hand, because that's what they're going to be carrying. A lot of these cats probably didn't take a psychological exam. I'm not defending the police department, but we need the police department. But we need a police department that understands us, and we need to understand them. Yes, I see a lot of criminals, but everybody who's called or who comes to criminal court, they're not criminals. They get caught up in stupid. We have to understand that. I'm willing, like I said, I talked to both bishops, and I said that we need to sit down with you, Mooch, because the last thing you want to do is meet with certain people in high positions and you don't know. They could be in your best interest, but it's not a good thing. You understand? And you need to have somebody who's knowledgeable of everything that you're doing. I had a good friend of mine. He's also a Mason. He was a 6'5", 350-pound New York State trooper, right here in Troop F. Name was Brody Mack. And what he told people about when he stopped them, look, most of the time we have our friends, buddies in the car with us, whether it's 4 people, 5 or whatever, in the car. When the police officer stops you, one person does the talking. Everybody else shut up or they do the walking. The police, simple. If it's at night, you turn on the light. Make sure he see everything that's going on in the vehicle. And like he said, like I said, excuse me, and like he told me, it's simple. He stopped one driver because there's only one driver of that car. That one driver should be doing the talking. The reason why I bring this up, because in the gym, a few times, the brothers come and they say, oh man, I got stopped by the police, and this, that, and the other. They made all of us get out the car. So he goes on to tell me, because everybody started talking about, oh man, he's stopping, and they running their mouth. So that naturally, like the chief said, he doesn't know what he's facing. No officers, you know, you don't see 2 officers in a patrol car. Majority of the time, it's one. It's one against whoever's in that vehicle. And all you could do is just be courteous, excuse me, and let the court deal with it. I understand you think law enforcement have preference in this, that, and the other. They don't. As the chief just mentioned, he fired, or the commission had to fire plenty of officers. And it's everywhere. Like Bishop Williams mentioned how it goes on in the street, it goes on in the school. And if it's going on in the school, it has to be started somewhere, and there's a possibility it starts in the household. A lot of these single parents are women. And we all know, and not to take nothing away from any single mother here, that they can't raise a man. So that's why I mentioned earlier that I raised a lot of these kids because they came to me and I talked to them. I'm about to retire from the criminal court after 40 years. Although my judges, they don't want to see me go, but like I said, there's new faces coming up. You new guys coming up. I wish y'all was around when I was doing the things I was doing for this community that I wasn't born or raised in. I'm a Bronx kid. I was born in Brooklyn. So you know how tough it is down there, because when I go down there to visit, there's certain people, like I said to my fiancée, I tell her, if I don't introduce you to them, you don't need to know them. And we keep it moving. I'm not rude to nobody, I don't look down on nobody.
Oh, we got a couple more online too, so if you could wrap it up.
I'm going to wrap it up right now. And I appreciate the job that you guys are doing. Miguel, see you still hanging in there with Broadway. I appreciate all you guys that came out. Welcoming the Williams. Yeah, the 3 Williams boys, now I got to call them. But congratulations, guys. Chief, I look forward. Like I said, I have a little juice in the state of New York.
Great, let's go.
And with that being said, I appreciate everything you guys are trying to do, but let's make it happen, guys. That talking and everything ain't a party, niece. We got to get serious. We need voters. We need people to become a part of the community by taking 5 minutes, 10 minutes to fill out the Bureau of Vital Statistics, or the form that they sent out. Census, yes. That's what needs to be done. I heard the DA say how people getting arrested that's not from this area. Anyway, with that said, good night all. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Eileen, next time of call?
Next, we have Sarah Rescorpo Cortez.
Hi everyone, can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I have a 2-part question. I would like to ask the first part, let you guys answer, and then ask the reserve time for follow-up. So we as civilians are currently overwhelmed with images of police brutality, specifically towards minorities and overwhelmingly the Black community. I think just going back to the earlier conversation around hiring, it's very easy to understand the apprehension of these communities to wear a badge that they've seen hurt someone that they look like. I have a thoughtful suggestion that I think would be incredibly impactful to the immigrant community especially. It's clear that from the Chief's plan, the initiatives to reach out to the broader community, but I don't know that I've heard anything that's specific to the Hispanic community. So I would like first to ask, how are you engaging with the immigrant and Spanish-speaking community? As a woman and daughter of immigrants, I did grow up with and still have a great fear of law enforcement because of my ethnicity, right? And I think those are emotions that need to be taken seriously. So with that, would the city of Middletown consider making Middletown a safe haven to DACA recipients and undocumented immigrants? So this would mean banning ICE and educating the community on their rights. So the fact that ICE would need a warrant to enter a home, or stopping and asking, or the fact that stopping and asking for papers is illegal. You mentioned the mission earlier, the mission of the Middletown Police Department earlier, committed to serve and protect all lives. My question is, how are you considering the lives of the immigrant community on both sides of citizenship, who greatly contribute to our Middletown's community? So will you consider this suggestion, which not only would increase the physical safety of the immigrant community, it would also ensure that its groups feel protected.
I'm confused.
Will you consider that change?
What was your name again? I'm sorry.
Sarah.
Sarah?
So,
Sarah, are you a resident of the city of Middletown?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and you're not aware of what has happened in the city with the immigrant community over the last 18 months to 2 years, with the ID cards, with the ICE, that the city of Middletown does not enforce any administrative warrant from ICE.
Can I rephrase the question? So I think it's, from what I understand, it's clear that there isn't any sort of initiative to, I guess, expose potential communities that would be harmed by something like this, but an active voice to, again, the mission is to protect and serve, an active voice to, one, ensure that ICE is not allowed in Middletown. Again, ICE and
Okay, I don't, let's take point by point.
that would be protecting the community.
Okay, but we'll take point by point. The city of Middletown cannot say,
The rights in stands.
okay, if you want an answer, I can give you an answer. The city of Middletown cannot tell ICE not to come into Middletown. But the city of Middletown has taken a position, very public position, including votes by the Common Council in issuing ID cards to undocumented people, probably the first community in the Mid-Hudson to do so, that we also do not enforce administrative warrants, meaning an ICE warrant. But we will enforce judicial warrants. So if an undocumented immigrant has committed a crime in which a judge has issued an arrest warrant for a crime, for criminal activity, we will enforce it. But we do not accompany ICE or participate with ICE on administrative warrants that are issued by ICE. So we have taken that action, and I don't understand, if you're a resident here and so involved in that issue, why you would not be aware of that.
Well, I guess my second question, so I asked that because I am aware that there were a lot of concerns in the earlier months of the summer and last year about ICE raids in multiple nearby areas.
Okay.
And again, you can't, I understand that you can't control what happens in Goshen, but I think making a clear stance in the city of Middletown would be a very strong initiative.
I understand your request. We've already done it since 2017. And you're going to find, all you need to do is speak with nobody who leaves Mid-Hudson and any of the immigrant groups here who we're working very closely with on the census, also to get undocumented folks here in the Middletown area counted, that we have taken a very strong position in regards to that. So I think that maybe if you do a little research on that issue, you'll find that Middletown has already taken the positions that you're advocating right now. And what was your other question?
Yep, so thank you for that response, that's helpful. So to my second point, again, in terms of, I think, of what the efforts we here are trying to do, it's clear that the Middletown Police Department is trying to ensure differentiation from the police brutality and the different horrible abuses of power that we've seen across the nation. I would like to talk about interactions and power dynamics. In looking at the crime reports on the police department website, it's clear that the overwhelming majority of interactions are traffic infractions. With that, let's consider what a typical traffic violation looks like. An officer identifies a traffic violation and pulls over a civilian. 100% of the time, a police officer, someone who has signed up to be a public servant and has professional training, will be approaching a civilian with a weapon. Approaching a civilian who may or may not have a weapon. Again, in looking at Middletown, the odds of a violent altercation, although possible, are significantly low. So my question is, why is the narrative that, again, an untrained and unarmed civilian in fear must remain calm in the face of an armed professional? Although inappropriate,
I have no idea are you proposing that the police officer just ignore traffic violations and crime? Who do you expect to do it?
If I could finish my question, I think you'd see the point I'm trying to get at.
Okay.
Thank you. So as I was saying, again, although inappropriate, any disrespect or attitude from a civilian to an officer should be met with a de-escalation technique. Anything else, any sort of turned attitude, escalates the situation and creates a dangerous environment, which equates to, again, not protecting or serving. So as you mentioned, and as you mentioned earlier as well, officers aren't currently equipped to handle situations that require mental health experts. And maybe that isn't the appropriate long-term solution. However, if the community if there is a need for mental health to be addressed, and if the immediate solution is sending in an officer, why is the mental health and emotional safety of these officers not being addressed? Again, talking about building relationships, civilians should expect respect to start, again, from professionals who sign requirement to be a public servant across the board. Even the police chief mentions that when going into a traffic altercation, he's met with disrespect and an attitude and an uncomfortable situation.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that we're saying that these officers are human too, are humans as well, and that's true, but these humans have weapons and can make a decision over the life of someone else, and there should be a higher expectation rather than
Okay, thank you for your comment. We believe we've already addressed it.
you brought up so many times. How will Middletown address it?
We've already addressed it, I think, throughout the evening, but thank you for your comment, and if you have something you want to send in writing with some detailed questions, maybe we can address, because there was a string of stuff there. Eileen, can you go on to the next caller?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, the next person is, hold on, Chloe Vitale. Chloe, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead,
Can you
Chloe.
hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Chloe.
Okay, thank you. All right, first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for their time. I currently have my son on my back, so I get it, everyone's tired. I just wanted to kind of bring attention to something that I think that we're glossing over a lot with the implicit bias of things. So the chief shared an amazing story earlier about how he helped a young gentleman after a teacher informed him that he was kind of straying on the wrong path, and now this man is living a life that he could be proud of. And what a lot of people are not realizing with stories like that is that the teacher did not intervene. If there wasn't a third party, then his personhood would not have been respected. His personhood would not have been evaluated when whatever altercation would have happened. And these are the things that we're constantly seeing. We talked about all the outreach programs that the police are doing right now. And one they're saying that they don't advertise, which is purposely saying that it's like you know certain people are only engaging in certain ways. So I understand the community has to do their part, but part of policy is to ensure where our community is going, so we have to invest in it. So we have to see where either youth or the old, elderly, or so forth and so on and that. And also we talked about the chief saying that when they go into these altercations or they go into traffic stops, that they have this mentality that they have to be on guard. But I think I read the statistics right before I got on the phone. Less than 90 police officers were killed in the line of duty last year. Over 500 people, 500 were killed, unarmed, were killed by police officers last year. And I say this to say that the education that a lot of us are receiving is based on rhetoric and not fact. So this is why this implicit bias is thriving, because we're not actually getting down to the nitty-gritty of our education. And especially with Middletown, especially with New York, we have such an amazing opportunity to be honest about our ties to the enslavement of Black people, to be honest about how wealth is generated in this community, give people honor in their experiences, and allow us as a community to actually come together and to heal. But to keep making these excuses and like it's okay that these systems exist, or it's okay that this is being taught, is not the answer. And it's disrespectful, honestly. Because if there's an awareness that there's a bias in it, then okay, you might not be able to change what the state says is the curriculum, but then you can talk to your officers and sit down. It doesn't make any sense. I'm a lay minister at St. Paul's United Methodist. We're the ones who run this warming station. Our pastor had to talk to our congregation the same way. And humility is not above anybody, and this is what bothers me. He talked earlier about accountability, and that's not being had. I don't really have a question. I'm speaking as a 31-year-old Black woman who's been a citizen. I was born at Arden Hill Hospital. This is my home. I am so proud of what this community is doing, but it's not gonna make an impact like it does if we're not taking the spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental healing that has to be attached to it. It's performative. And this is where people are getting lost, and that's why it gets emotional, because we're not really paying attention to one another. And I'm sorry for rambling on, but that is what I have to say.
Okay, Ms. Patel, we have a school board president, Bishop Williams is here. He can address some of what you're talking about.
So let me address this in this way, and I can't speak for any other district, but I can speak for my district. Much of the work and much of the things that you addressed, the work has already been started. The work of dealing with social emotional learning, the work of dealing with trauma sensitivity, those are all things that have been in my pet peeves for the last 8 years or so of pushing along those lines. Here's where I think that we are at now as a community and even as a society or even as a district. I think that coming into this health crises that we're in, dealing with the social crises that we're in right now, is that we no longer have the luxury of time. And I think that it's incumbent on each of us to accelerate the process. Now, I understand that things take time and there must be a process in the way things go, but I think that it's incumbent on each of us to understand that now we have to take the responsibility of growing up a lot faster than we wanted to. And so, when I was talking earlier about accountability, that means that the accountability has to come from every level. So let me say it like this. I happen to have the privilege of serving as the first African-American president in the history of Middletown School District. But it can't be my voice alone. And I think that even this movement that we're in right now is a statement of saying that we need the voices of everybody, whether they be white, black, Hispanic, Asian, wherever background you come from, we need everybody's voice to cry out and voice to speak, so that we can address and make the necessary changes as it relates to education, to what's being taught in our history, what's being addressed with the social emotional learning of our students of color, whether it be black, brown, whatever, that we address the issues as it relates to the trauma that all of us are facing now. And even if I be honest, not just the trauma that our current young people are facing. I said something earlier about being pulled over the years. To be honest, it's a trauma for me. I know I'm not in danger. I know that I'm not. I know that, but when I see the lights come on, I get nervous because of my trauma. And so I think that we need to be real. And the DA said something earlier that really resonated with me. It's time to have the tough conversations. It's time to make each other feel uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that we don't like one another. It doesn't mean we don't respect one another. But it's time to make each other feel uncomfortable so that we can address the issue. Until we do that, we're not gonna make much headway. We're not going to make much headway. So we're doing the work. We're doing the work. Now it's time for everyone just to step up and make sure that the work we're doing is implemented, is really truly implemented, and that we begin to see concrete results. Not results that we're looking at down 5 years. I could do a 5-year plan all day long, but I don't need 5 years down the line. It's not going to save the life of my son, my 17-year-old son now. And so we've got to begin to get do some things that's going to be concrete. So, but we need your voice as well to write to your send emails, write, stand up and speak to all of the different areas and the people that are in authority to speak and demand change. I don't know if that makes any difference or if what I said make any sense, but it's what I had to say.
Well, thank you. And we're approaching 3 hours, so what I'd like to do, this was a getting to know you conversation with everyone. What's that?
Was there one other person on? I thought there was.
I think you have one more person on?
She decided next time.
Okay, all right.
I know there was one.
So you got to tell you too. All right, so for the next meeting, if we're hoping to have like some topics, and like the DA mentioned, so if everyone can leave their email with us, maybe submit something in writing, what you thought we did right, did wrong, what conversations you'd like to have in the next meeting. We're going to try to keep it to like a 90-minute meeting in the future, and more of a roundtable type of discussion, and try to stick to Middletown, because the goal here is to come up with a plan for the Middletown Police Department. We know the national issues, we know you guys are getting an idea. I think, Chief, you could share your PowerPoint with all the members of the panel.
Yes.
Maybe put it online on the website, on your police department website. That'll give an outline and give you an idea of where we're going. There's many issues we didn't attack yet, the defund police movement, and we touched on these things, but if you want to get into more depth, the demilitarization, we touched on that, then that'll be great. But and maybe we can focus on a few just topics at the next meeting and go no more than 90 minutes. All right, so thank everyone for participating and coming, and and everyone who was on the virtual town hall also. Thank you so much.